All right. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone can hear me out there, press 1. All right. So welcome back to the Black Brain Trust again. This is Black Tech Talk, episode 269. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. There's a docket in the description beneath the video should be coming for you to follow along with. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you get every single update from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab wall. And if you want to partake in the panel discussion, let us know from the chat and we will get you on the panel. This is also a night for mentorship. So if you want to get into IT or trying to make a transition from one area of IT to the next, I do offer a mentorship. We also have other members of the Black Brain Trust who are in IT that can actually assist you in that area, free of charge. We do not charge. All right. Just as an addendum, in terms of house cleaning, we have moved on to Zoom. We are not using Google Hangouts or OBS software or StreamYard. We are using Zoom for the foreseeable future until something else is available that fits our criteria and our content, what we're trying to do. You should be able to join if you have the email with the link. You should be able to join. Oh, there's one attending. That's you, Gabe. So let me promote you to the panel. So before you join the panel, I have to promote you to the panel first before you can engage.
Gotcha. There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. What's up, man?
I'm chilling, bro. What's going on with you, man?
Not too much. Just trying to make sure I was on time. And make sure. Yeah, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't, I didn't anticipate even going forward with this because I didn't hear back from you. So, but it's cool. It's cool. We're gonna get it cracking anyways. How's your week been going in terms of tech?
It's been going good. I actually haven't been really doing a lot of work in general. I actually moved from Pennsylvania to Ohio, so I've been doing nothing this week but moving. But overall, it's been pretty good. Coming off an engagement the week before, was down there in where's that? Texas, Carthage, Texas, at a facility. Had a whole bunch of findings, so just kind of been writing nose up, reviewing some analysis, and it's going forward there. So, yeah, pretty much been my week. How about you?
It's been good, man. Doing a lot of cloud security reviews, doing assessments, and actually battling a lot of not malware, but phishing email. Very clever phishing email attempts that's been plaguing the organization. So,
that's probably like the most common joint for a lot of organizations, right? Phishing. That's like the easiest way to get in, right? Because you don't have to really be very technical in order to be able to compromise a machine. You can just trick a person and then boom, you're in to some degree, right? So, man, those are hitting all types of perimeter defenses on the regular. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And most organizations are not equipped to deal with this. I mean, we saw what happened with Honda this week, right? Honda had a. You haven't?
No.
Oh man, it's in the docket. So we'll get to that, man. Just give me a few seconds and share my screen. We'll open up the first article.
Yep.
If anybody else wants to get on the panel, this isn't just about cybersecurity. It's actually about SysAdmin stuff as well. So
cool.
All right, let me share my screen with the first article.
Oops, and I'm trying to join. How am I able to see your screen from the Zoom? Maybe not. Anyway.
You're able to see my screen.
I said, how am I able to see your screen?
I'll have to share it.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to share it.
Okay, yeah, because I was in the Zoom app and I'm like, okay, I'm not seeing nothing but the, okay, cool.
All right, give me a few seconds.
Oh, there we go.
All right, so next, the first item on the docket is from techspot.com. Become a server admin, get certified, and validate your IT know-how. Moving to a career in IT could be the perfect path to realizing your enthusiasm for all things computing, all while making money at it. Start at home with Windows Server Admin CompTIA IT Certification Bundle. So what's happening here is there are bundles out here for studying and whatnot. For those who want to get into IT, this is the actual path to go. This is typically the path that I've gone: A+, Network Plus, Server Plus, and did some Windows admin work as well. So if you all want to engage in IT at that level, at the ground level, this is exactly where you're going to start from. This is going to lead me into the next item.
I was just going to ask a question about that one.
Yes.
Because aren't several of the Windows certs, aren't those expiring or being going away, like the Windows Server app certs?
Probably around 2020, I think. I know some of them have already expired in June.
Yeah.
But you probably won't see like 2016 and stuff like that expire until like late 2020.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with the Windows certs, but are they looking at having some type of replacement, or is it just like, yeah, we're not doing certs anymore? How is that?
I think they're moving to a more ongoing learning.
Okay.
So they do. Microsoft has a EDX page that allows for a certificate and not certification.
Okay.
So certificate is like ongoing, a college accredited sort of level that they're looking at. I'm pretty sure they want to penetrate the universities and try to get into that sector.
Okay.
And not just the universities, the on the job training, OTA, so or OTJ is what they call it. All right, this one is from opensource.com. 24 sysadmin job interview questions you should know. What is this stupid thing? All right, as a geek who always played with computers, a career after my master's in IT was a natural choice. So I decided the sysadmin path was the right one. In the process of my career, I have grown quite familiar with the job interview process. Here is a look at what to expect, the general career path, and a set of common questions and my answers to them. Organizations need someone who understands the basics of how a system works so that they can keep their data safe and keep their services running smoothly. You might ask, wait, isn't there more that a sysadmin can do? You are right. Now, in general, let's look at what might be a typical sysadmin's day-to-day task. Depending on their company's needs and the person's skill level. A sysadmin's tasks vary from managing desktops, laptops, networks, and servers to designing the organization's IT policies. Sometimes sysadmins are even in charge of purchasing and placing orders for new IT equipment. Those seeking system administration as their career path might find it difficult to keep their skills and knowledge up to date. As rapid changes in the IT field are inevitable, the next natural question that arises out of anyone's mind is how IT professionals keep up with the latest updates and skills. Both difficulty questions. What are the first 5 commands you type on a Nix server after login? So LSBOK to see information on all block services. Who to see who is logged in onto the server. Top to get a sense of what is running on the server. And DFKHT to view the amount of disk space available on the server. Netstat to see what TCP network connections are active. It's actually a pretty good breakdown. How do you make a process run in the background, and what are the advantages of doing so? You can make a process run in the background by adding the special character and at the end of the command. Generally, applications that take too long to execute and don't require user interaction are sent to the background so that we can continue to work on the terminal. Is running these commands as root good or bad? Running as root is bad due to 2 major issues. The first is risk. Nothing prevents you from making a careless mistake when you are logged in as root. If you try to change the system in a potentially harmful way, you need to use sudo, which introduces a pause to ensure that you aren't about to make a mistake. The second reason is security. Systems are harder to hack if you don't know the admin user's login information. Having access to root means you already have 1/2 of the working set of admin credentials. What is the difference between RM and RM-F? The RM command by itself only deletes the name files. With -RF, you add 2 additional features. The -R and -R or recursive flag recursively deletes the directory's contents, including hidden files and subdirectories, and the -F or force flag makes RM ignore non-existent files and never prompt for confirmation. This is very good information.
Mm-hmm.
Compressed.tgz has a file size of approximately 15 gigabytes. How can you list its contents, and how do you list them only for a specific file? To list the file contents, tar tf-archive.tgz. To extract a specific file, tar xf archive.tgz file name. What's your take on this?
I think these are good skills, I think, to have. But during it, that's what I was going to ask you next. I said, have you ever been asked these questions during an interview? Because I mean, I think the best tool that we can have as security professionals or even IT admins is Google. Like nobody just, well, I don't know. Some people maybe, yeah. But a lot of times when I run into these type of tasks, at least the ones that I don't do on a regular basis, I mean, there's no way that I can remember all of these terminal commands overall. And a lot of these, I've even done thrown several of these, right? You do like a netstat .ls or -ls or remove some files. You can throw that in a bash script and you can run that by itself. So remembering all that, is just, I don't think that's really necessary to the necessity for passing an interview. But I've never done a sysadmin interview. So that's what I was going to ask you. Have you ever been asked these questions during the sysadmin interview?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
They will ask those questions.
Like they want you to know it like off the rip, just like boom, boom, boom. You just gotta list them down.
You have at least 5 of these questions that they're mentioning here that you got to get at least 3 of them right. The rest of it is like kind of nuanced. You can go about it different ways if you're on a cert OS or if you're on Ubuntu or something like that, right? Fedora, right. The commands might be a bit different in terms of like whether or not you which packages you use, like RPM versus Yum. So I personally don't jump in and out of in cybersecurity. We really don't get into these sort of depths of area for system administration. We really focus on other policy-based issues that are going to affect the organizations. We really don't touch a lot of SysAdmin stuff. So
well, I think it really definitely depends upon the role, because I know when I do a lot of analysis for data, I do use a lot of like the SysAdmin commands, like pretty much everything that was just mentioned, understanding different connections, TCP, UDP connections on your device, or what's being blocked. So we do at least in a lot of the role that I do get into a bit of the system administration, especially from a command line perspective or using different tools.
But you have to configure a lot of things for like your FireEye rollouts, right? So that if you're working on deployments or something like that, right?
Yeah, sure. But
right. So that's where that comes in. That part that makes sense for you, but
I don't use so we use at least for the engagements that I do, we use the FireEye products to get data, right? Because we have particular hardware that can get particular types of data quickly and efficiently. But as it concerns the analysis, we're using a lot of open source tools. Like everybody has their kind of bread and butter go-to tools that they use. Right. But yeah, a lot of times I am on the terminal, like just like sifting through stuff, using strings, chopping up packets. I mean, you name it. So yeah.
All right, let me get to the next one real quick. Just give me a second.
Some of the difficulty questions were pretty interesting.
Which ones?
If you scroll down more to the high level ones, I mean the high difficulty questions.
Scroll down.
It's all good. Which ones were? Number 7 was interesting because ICMP is used. It's not a TCP or DP. It's not a port. They'll use that to try to trick you up, or like the routing gateway stuff. That's interesting. I think these are still the medium ones though. But yeah, some of these are kind of interesting. That sometimes they'll actually try to trick you up because I guess you should know. But like at least memorizing commands, I usually don't memorize any commands. I'll have like a Git repository that I use that'll have just like all my scripts or anything that I run to get particular information, because I really try to focus in on analysis rather than command line techniques or whatever, or little tricks and tips. I'm like, nah, forget all that. I can automate that and get to my analysis faster. So
yeah, you're on a time schedule, so you don't have a lot of time to be screwing around. You just got to get to where you need to get to. Let me just scroll down a lot of this. Explain the boot process for Linux.
That's interesting.
How do you check the error messages while the server is booting up? So varlog.
Yep.
Via demessaging. So
these are really important too, as it concerns. So they've done some forensics type of work too, some forensics and incident response. So they look for these particular type of log files in order to get. So say for instance, if machine has been compromised, right? It's messed up. This is the machine. This is like patient 0, right? Where the infection started, or where the worm got into. You want to be able to at least post-mortem, be able to collect these particular logs to give to the correct parties in order to analyze, to say, okay, this is how it got in, this is what happened, this is where it spread, right? That's where you get into a lot of your netstat and what other devices it talks to. So yes, those like the varlog boot .log varlog boot messages, those are ones that I know that we collected in order to understand what's happened with a particular incident. So Pretty cool. Yeah. So useful for sure. But even though it's SysAdmin, definitely useful in cybersecurity too.
Yes.
Hopefully, I'm not talking too fast for the chat and everybody.
No. If they want to, they can listen to the playback. What is the difference between a symbolic link and a hard link? That's actually a good one. A symbolic or soft link is an actual link to the original file, whereas a hard link is a mirror copy of the original file. If you delete the original file, the soft link has no value because it then points to a non-existent file. Yeah, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, just even people that's brand new, just trying to understand how, files link and talk to one another, because it points to a parent or it points to something, and then that points to a parent, and that points to another process or another file. So yeah, stuff is really interesting.
Yeah. How do you change the kernel parameters? What kernel options might you need to tune? That's really that's getting up there. That's really sysadmins, at least for our environment, really focus on Windows. They really don't typically focus on Linux at all. We don't have any Linux boxes running for the most part. We have everything is on Azure. So all of our AWS instances might be for computational analysis by clinical biologist teams and stuff like that. They really they're the data scientists. That's what they run over on their side. So
I see.
We don't really run into all that stuff. And if they blow out an AWS instance, they just rebuild it. So it's not a big deal.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. How do you run a script as another user without their password? For example, if you were editing sudoers file, you might use visudo or vi sudo. So vi is the
I hate it.
Yeah.
It's so hard. I mean, it's difficult. I feel like it only take a couple of hours to really try to dig down into, but it's just difficult. I mean, I just use what is this? What do I use in Linux? Something that's pretty simple, where I'm it's almost like a command line type of editing of the file. So in order to deal with it, but VI, not mess with that.
All right, let me get to this next one.
Sure.
The advanced questions. How does traceroute work, and what protocol does it use?
Okay.
The command traceroute, depending on the operating system, allows you to see exactly what routers you touch as you move through the chain of connections to your final destination. If you end up with a problem where you can't connect to or ping your final destination, a traceroute can help you in that you can tell exactly where the chain of connection stops. With this information, you can contact the correct people, whether it will be your own firewall, your ISP, your destination's ISPs, or somewhere in the middle. The traceroute command, like ping, uses ICMP protocol, but you can also use the first step of the TCP three-way handshake to send requests for a response.
That's very interesting, because a lot of times people use those, very common commands like traceroute, or doing like a whois lookup to do like open source intelligence for particular targets. So people who are hackers, they'll do this. They'll see how many hops it is, right? And hops meaning how many devices does their computer pass through before they have connection to whatever network or computer or router or whatever endpoint device it gets to you, right? So it's really interesting, because they're like, okay, I got to go here. If I'm able to join this network, that decreases my hops. Or if it's no hops, you boom, right there on that network with it, right? And then the who is, then starting to know like the address space. So it's really interesting. A lot of this stuff can be used for good, right? System administration, understanding the systems and the endpoints and their particular environment, but it also can be used by somebody malicious, right? And using these good things in order to do bad things, to get a lot of information about whoever their target is or what their target is.
Right. So it's a reconnaissance tool.
Absolutely.
What is the main advantage of using chroot? When and why do we use it? What is the purpose of the mount dev, mount process, and mount sys commands in a chroot environment? That's really advanced. I'm not even gonna go into it because
I don't get it. Yeah, I don't get into that myself. I was about to read it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But 20 is something that we run into a lot, right? The question 20, what are sticky ports?
Yeah, sticky ports are one of the network administrator's best friends and worst headaches. They allow you to set up your network so that each port on a switch only permits one computer to connect on that port by locking it out to a particular MAC address.
That's difficult in like an IT enterprise environment because you're always switching out machines, you're always switching out devices, and if you lock a particular port down to a machine down to a particular port, and you try to switch it out, I mean, sometimes that whole switch will turn off, or that particular port will shut down. So yeah, that can be a headache, but it's very strict security. So, but
yeah,
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What is a false positive and false negative in the case of an IDS? When the intrusion detection system device generates an alert for an intrusion which has actually not happened, this is a false positive. If the device has not generated any alert and the intrusion has actually happened, this is the case of a false negative.
It's only a CISSP question.
Yeah, it is. I think it is. I'm not going to go into the rest of this because this is really advanced. If you have not really been in IT long enough, these questions aren't going to make any sense to you, and it probably won't help you at all unless you actually have the experience in working in that area to really answer those questions. Usually they won't get down to these questions, but I think, and I probably know, if you don't have the literacy from the first section of these questions, you're not going to make it this far anyways in the interview. They'll probably end the interview pretty early. System administrator salaries have a wide range of some sites mentioning $70,000 to $100,000 a year, depending on the location, the size of the organization, and your education level, plus years of experience. In the end, the system administrator career path boils down to your interest in working with servers and solving cool problems. Now, I would go ahead and achieve your dream path. We talked about this the last time. But guys trying to get into IT have to understand this. These are the complexities that happen, or that go on in most IT organizations at the top level. So these are senior or principal SysAdmin, SysEngineer questions. And for me, I've never been in that particular role. I've never been in a principal role, but I've seen how they mostly operate, man, and they're pretty much sticklers for all this stuff. So they bring guys like myself and Gabe on so that we can focus on the cybersecurity aspect, and they can keep focused on the SysAdmin aspect. And that's why there's a division of roles and responsibilities. So we don't have to learn all this stuff, to be quite honest. We only need to know at least maybe 10% of those questions.
Looks like Young Grizzly is on, but he said he's muted.
No, he's listening in the chat, I think.
Oh, got it. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, he's listening in the in attendees. So he's a phone call listener. All right, this one is from certification.comptia.org. There's no doubt that Linux is quickly becoming a powerful force in the IT industry. In fact, you're probably using Linux without even knowing it. From smartphones and home media centers to smart thermostats and in-car GPS systems, this open source operating system is quietly running nearly all supercomputers and cloud servers that power our daily lives. With such a significant impact on the computing industry, it's easy to understand why Linux has become a core skill for IT professionals. So we just went over this earlier in the previous article, but this is just touching on the necessity of understanding Linux and actually knowing it. So essential Linux skills. Service configuration, the ability to plan, establish, and maintain consistent system life cycle to ensure a healthy system.
Yeah, get into a lot of like the cron jobs and like those regular processes that'll kind of kick off by themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have scripting and development, the ability to write code using command languages and programming languages such as Bash or Python. Security, the ability to protect a Linux system from malicious hackers. So that's our job, gave myself.
Real quick, it looks like somebody raised their hand. Young Grizzly raising his hand. I don't know what that. He wants to.
Yeah, if you can't join the panel unless you raise your hand on.
Oh, he's on. Oh, okay, cool.
Yep. Troubleshooting, the ability to leverage Linux, different Linux commands to identify and fix bugs. Soft skills, the ability to problem solve, communicate, and work in teams. Soft skills are very important. I see a lot of Black males who tend to not be able to work with non-Black people, and this becomes a problem. So you better figure it out. Get some soft skills.
I think I'm in. Hello, by the way.
What's going on, bro?
What's up, man?
Hey, gentlemen. Hey, how are y'all?
All right.
Thanks for the troubleshooting and support. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. You have anything you want to add about the SysAdmin discussion that's been having? We've been having about last couple articles.
I was chomping at the bit on some of the other stuff in those the earlier questions, but as far as chroot, I did type this in the chat. You mainly use chroot when you're working with another system via live CD a lot, or if you're doing troubleshooting, or even as you guys mentioned, postmortem, where you actually have the system and you've mounted that hard disk, but you want to simulate as if you're working from that hard disk using, its Etsy password file or Etsy shadow file, things like that. So you can actually do some of the forensics. And then I won't get into some of the other stuff, but those were really good questions and they really got deep in there for a second. So that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Grizzly, you have a certification as well in Linux, right?
Yeah, I have the Linux Plus cert. I've had it for a while now.
Okay.
Yeah, so that one is through the Linux Foundation, and and I'll put my notes again in this the comment section for this one, this video. But a lot of this, like we talked about the last time, just immersion is the best teacher in that platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say spin up a machine and have that like your dedicated OS running on that particular machine, and just work with it. And it's really, I find it nice, pretty nice, even in comparison to Windows. Just really efficient, and quick. It's way quicker than a lot of the processes that I run in Windows. At least more of those CPU exhaustive type of processes. But
yeah, even its command line is easier than the command line that you would use mostly with like PowerShell nowadays. PowerShell has a lot of commands, but they're like crazy in terms of their names and such. Linux is a little bit more, I guess you would almost say, somewhat mature or just older. So a lot of that stuff that Windows is going through now, Linux has already done in terms of their command line tools, and that's where the true strength is in the command line and away from the GUI itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm actually working in a Mac right now, and I have the terminal for Mac is all like those bash commands, those same. It's like a bash shell that pops up. So
right.
So yes,
there's a bash shell. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I use the bash shell when I don't, because I'm transitioning, not necessarily fully, but I do it for work. But as if I can't find something or do something on the Mac, I just go straight to the command shell. I'm the bash shell, and it just do what I got to do. Pretty easy.
Yeah, bash is somewhat universal. The biggest thing is just learning the differences, I guess you would say idiosyncrasies or nuances between the different operating systems. I'm sorry, Mike, you were saying.
No, I was just going to say, let me get to this next article real quick.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this one is from Forbes.com. AWS certifications increase tech pay up to $12,000 a year. Stupid pop-ups. AWS and Google certifications are among the most lucrative in North America, paying an average salaries of $129,868 and $147,357 respectively. So these and many other insights of which certifications provide the highest salaries by region of the world are from the recently published Global Knowledge 2019 IT Skills and Salary Report. The report is downloadable here. The methodology, based on 12,271 interviews across non-management IT staff and mid-level professionals, including managers and team leads and senior level and executive roles across 4 global regions. For additional details regarding the study methodology, please go to page 24 of the report. So the key insights from the report include the following. Cross-certifying on AWS is providing a $12,000 salary bump to IT professionals who already have Citrix and Red Hat Linux certifications. Citrix certifications pay an average salary of $109,546, and those earning an AWS certification see a $12,339 salary bump on average. I'm not going to read this whole thing. Basically, what they're saying. Okay, here's the breakdown right here. Basically, what they're saying is that having a specialty cert and a general cert actually boosts your market value. So what you can demand from a salary and wage perspective. So we see Red Hat Linux is the top grosser, and then moves down to VMware, which is virtualization, and then Citrix, which is software as a service, platform as a service, and then you have ITIL and IT service management. So those are the guys who, or those are the people who kind of run IT operations from a management standpoint and from a business intelligence standpoint. And then you have Cisco, which is your networking. So people who add on additional with the AWS cert, see a considerable bump there as well, because network guys and cloud seem to go together hand in hand. Same thing with Microsoft. So Microsoft certs and plus your AWS cert, is going to give you a nice healthy boost. And CompTIA guys, CompTIA people, Linux Plus, Network Plus, adding the AWS cert is going to give you considerable amount of leverage. So,
I think it's interesting about this, especially with the cloud certification game. I've been hearing a lot about that, but I think a lot of it, I don't know if all of the reports take into account of region and cost of living area. Because a lot of times those cloud, like I always see cloud security engineers or cloud security professional roles. Most of them are in very high cost of living places.
Yep.
I would have to assume that has to take into account those salary boosts, because if you're living in like California or New York, especially where like a lot of those like banking institutions or those big tech companies who automatically provide higher salaries because of the cost of living, I think that probably boosted up. Because I was just Googling like cloud security engineers, right, for like Michigan or Ohio, and they're pretty like consistent to somewhere around that 75 to 100 to 100K. But I wasn't seeing any like the 120s or 150s in those lower cost of living areas.
No, because because the demand is much higher in these urban centers, right? So New York and Boston and London, right, and those places, the demand is much higher because there's so much the necessity is higher because there's a lot of operations happening in those financial districts and things of that nature. So for a lot of those salaries, it's not 100% to say, but it's a good base standpoint. I do know people who do make that much money, but they also have a lot of experience that goes with it. So that's the skinny on that. But in terms of like, low rural areas, a lot of times they would have to just outsource anyways.
Yeah.
In my experience, they just outsource.
Yeah.
Because the talent is not there.
Absolutely. But they'll have one person who pretty much knows everything or has the keys to the kingdom, and then they'll, like you said. So I was in doing an engagement for an organization, and the CISO, he doesn't even have a staff. He doesn't have anybody in his organization. He manages all the third-party vendors and all the third-party operations. So they have a third-party SOC. They have third-party software that's managed by other organizations. So it's really interesting. He was saying that he's seeing that type of model better, like more adapted, because you can scale and you can adjust everything as you see fit rather than maintaining people and resources. Like he doesn't have a staff at all and he's a CISO. Like, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. So.
Yeah, you're starting to see a lot of things being farmed out. As far as the AWS stuff, I mean, I think they need a certification just for their pricing calculator alone. If you ask me. But
tell me about
But if you know those cloud platforms, AWS, Azure, or even say OpenStack or something like that, or working with Docker, Kubernetes, and how to leverage those, that definitely is big because a lot of people want to move towards that for, as you guys are just mentioning, scaling.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the times, your CIO or CISO, somebody hears something about Kubernetes and cloud. Cloud is like the buzz term, and they're like, "Oh, well, we need cloud too, right?" And then they jump out the window and they go all in on cloud and all these other services, but then they don't have enough staff to actually man any of it. So now they find themselves in a pickle where they themselves don't understand it. They don't feel that they have to run it themselves. So, and they don't have enough staff. So outsourcing becomes the deal. And, stop buying. My advice to them is stop buying into all these buzz terms: blockchain, cloud, cybersecurity, China, Russia, mining tigers, oh my, right? That becomes a problem because now you've bought into a platform that you don't really understand, and no one, and you may not even need it. Like, Kubernetes is all the rage now, but do you even know what Kubernetes is? Do you even understand the significance behind Kubernetes and the orchestration tools that are behind it? Docker, the security aspect of containers. That's a whole entire discussion in itself.
Oh, because you talk to an AWS representative, they'll start the security conversation with this is a shared security responsibility. This is shared. So they say there's stuff that we do, but there's some stuff that you guys got to do too. They'll start
especially. Especially when you're working. Especially when you're working with, I'll have to find the link to this video, but there's a gentleman from Disney, and he was talking about using I think it's the S3 bucket, and writing to that and how that works in terms of their SLA and how it works when it's actually written. And, you actually have to have a dev team on the other side of that to just understand how these things work, along with working with AWS.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? You bought into all these services and you have no idea what's going on with the services. So everybody thinks that because it's AWS, it's got to be secure. It's in the cloud. What can possibly go wrong? Until you wake up one morning and you don't have access to your data.
Yeah, it's far from it. It's kind of the big thing. Like microservices, that was such a huge thing. But the way microservices work, you've broken up a lot of the responsibilities. Therefore, you've actually spread things out even more in some cases.
Yeah. That's some of the things that we worry about. Like, for example, the other week, or last week, I should say, we had an issue where, from a DevOps perspective, they updated an agent on one of the on several of the instances in the cloud, and now agents are kernel level based, and they bring down the kernel level, which means that the whole operating system stops, which means that your domain controllers and all your other utility servers and services actually went down too, because of that one agent, because of your agile adoption of fast software development, fast application development. Push it out right now and then hope it and then let it update. But next thing you know, that whole entire stack just went down, and we have no way of responding because no one told us what was going on, because you put everything in the cloud, or you spun up some instances that we weren't notified on, and you never open up a ticket, a change management ticket, or anything like that. Everything is, a big cluster. Well, I'm not gonna swear, but these are the things that, if we don't have visibility in cybersecurity, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
Right. I put a video in the chat, "Where Did All My Servers Go?" by Garth Henson. This was at JSConf in Hawaii. And that was a really good video about what you're talking about. So I definitely recommend people take a look at that after the stream.
I saw that video before. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, this one's from redhat.com. Learn the technical ropes and become a sysadmin. There are a variety of ways these days to learn the technical ropes and become a sysadmin. If that's your goal, here are some suggestions. If I was writing this article on how to learn the technical ropes to become a sysadmin 10 or 15 years ago, I would be writing a very different piece. If you have worked in technology for any reasonable amount of time, you know that the technology changes quickly, requiring technical professionals to keep pace with the industry, which can place a lot of pressure on us to always be learning in order to stay relevant. There is no traditional path to becoming a system administrator when it comes to acquiring the technical skills you need to become to be effective and high performing. You ask 5 people on how they got started as a sysadmin, you likely hear 3 different answers and maybe more. Some sysadmins have an associate's or college degrees, and some don't. Depending on when a sysadmin began their career, he or she might have a variety of technical certificates from Red Hat, Microsoft, Cisco, CompTIA, etc., or none at all. Here in 2019 and beyond, I believe that there will be more technical professionals with a certification that augments their understanding of different areas of technology. Hiring managers and companies expect to see more than just a college degree on a resume. No one would deny that you have to prove that you have the technical knowledge through theory, but you definitely have to be able to put that knowledge into application. There are quite a few ways to gain the technical skills to become a sysadmin. So how do you learn these technical ropes? Keep reading. The role of a sysadmin. Let's just clarify what a typical sysadmin does. According to Wikipedia, sysadmin is a person that is responsible for the upkeep, configuration, and reliable operation of computer systems, especially multi-user systems, multi-user computers such as servers. Sysadmins ensure that the uptime, performance, resources, and security of these computer systems are managed daily to meet the needs of users while trying to keep costs low. Some sysadmins might work as Linux or a Windows sysadmin, or they might support a hybrid environment that has both Windows and Linux servers. The 3 learning paths for sysadmins. In no way does this article purports to cover all of the ways that someone can learn the technical ropes to become a sysadmin, but it will provide a general path. Learning is continuous. As a technical professional, there will never come a day when you are not learning. So you need to make sure you are comfortable with always feeling that you have to learn more and to keep pace and be successful. Today, there are several common paths to acquiring your technical chops. And I like to explore these. So instructor-led learning, that's one way. Virtual learning, And then you have self-study and books and podcasts. So podcasts like these, you'll learn. Lag practice every day. I can't stress this enough. I think the guys on the panel also stress this as well. And not just technical skills. It is very important to note in the article that yes, you have to learn the technical ropes to become a sysadmin, but it can't be forgotten or dismissed that you have to also learn the soft skills. We went over this earlier a few articles ago that you definitely need to have soft skills. You can only go so far without learning skills like communication, doing presentations, writing, acceptability, salesmanship, critical thinking, project management, problem solving, attention to detail, time management, organizational skills, and analytical skills. So I think they're bang on the money with this. I would say my preferred method of learning is self-study. I do buy a lot of books physically, but since Barnes and Noble has gone out of business in terms of the brick and mortar aspect, I find myself buying ebooks now. I have a tablet, Chromebook tablet, and I can't stress enough how beneficial it has been for me to read books in a different way. What's you guys preferred method?
I was gonna say for me, definitely a lot of books, but not just necessarily. I think that sometimes, at least in security, a lot of us want to do a lot of things in the field, right? We want to do network security. We want to do that forensics. We want to do incident response. We want to do red teaming and pen testing. And I think that I try to look at particular business needs, or even very much so more particularly the needs of the going in the direction of the trends in my particular sector of security. And yeah, then I start to tailor my learning around that, so that I'll find different, like it said, like podcasts, but yeah, books specifically. And a lot of these books, they have tutorials, like step-by-step tutorials with commands, with different systems that you can set up. A lot of them are open source tools that you can set up on how to use these things to accomplish your purposes. So yeah, I do the self-learning, virtual learning. I used to use CBT nuggets a little bit when I was going through like the Cisco route. But yeah, a lot of it is just directed or focused self-study. Yep.
Me personally, I'm a autodidact polyglot, and that's not my sexual orientation. So, anyways, but
Terrible, terrible.
Terrible joke. Okay. But personally, where I grew up, and somebody asked, we should do a show on how to get in IT. Again, me, jump in the mud, jump in the swamp. I live here in South Florida, so there's swamp. But jump into it. So I like howtoforge.com. I've used that a lot for Linux training, and that has been the best example of how I learn, because they give you examples or give you working examples. And then from there, I usually build off of it or build up from that or take it apart. So other YouTubers like Brad Traversy, using some of his stuff, how to build an API, a lot of the things that he has in one of his GitHub repositories is the base of how I build APIs. Anything that I do, the genesis of it, if you will, is from his work. And then from there, now I really do a lot of Udemy and just looking at other people's code, because I've gotten a little bit better on how to, read certain things and just virtualize it in my own mind and visualize the actual outcome as well. So that's really how I've really gotten into it. I don't like reading. I'm not going to lie to you. I really just don't. So, but, and people find that surprising, but you get information in so many other ways. So there's a lot out there, but howtoforge.com and Udemy, I like them in terms of online learning, and being able to listen to courses and go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like Udemy, but sometimes, man, some of that content be questionable, and it's like,
yes,
who gave this 5 stars?
Yeah, man.
Probably their mother.
Yep.
What I found is once you find that one instructor, I think there's Maximilian Schwarzmunger or something like that. I think it's Academind is his. He has a YouTube page as well. But once you find him, Brad Traversy, or some other instructors on there, then you stick with them because they have so much content on there, and it's actually really good. Like I'm listening to one from MongoDB, which is great, and that's it.
And YouTube is a huge resource for a lot of free material. Sometimes if Udemy instructors aren't, I guess if they aren't doing so well, or if they just want to give away free material, old material, they'll just upload it to YouTube. Or there's cases where people upload their stuff to YouTube, but the material is there. So you can even find free stuff, nothing huge. But if you find particular topics or even courses of Udemy or Udacity courses, you just copy and paste them into YouTube and see if you can find them on there too. But
you're terrible. You are terrible.
No, I'm saying because it'll help to guide you to free resources.
Freecodecamp.org actually has a YouTube channel, and they release stuff all the time, like you're saying. Legit. Brad Traversy, Academind, he's totally right. It's as bad as it sounds.
He's against it because actually that's a question. Why are you against that, or why is it terrible?
What do you mean? Well, what I'm saying here is the unwillingness to pay for content is becoming a problem in the tech industry. Everything has to be free. I'm not knocking anybody who doesn't. I'm saying it hurts the authors who try to put out content. So I've always been of the position that if you're an author and you put something up for sale, I'm going to buy it if it's worthy of being purchased. But what's been happening in the IT sector is that people will go out and spend, bundles of money on a Mac, but won't spend $1 on content that's actually going to help them advance themselves. And that's a shame, because that's what ruined the certification industry, is that people started doing dumps and they started doing cram exams and stuff like that. And that's what ruined the validity of certification. So I've always been against that method, but that's just me personally.
Yeah, because there's a lot of different ways to kind of look at it too. Is that there are some organizations that sometimes people put out things for free, right? Or at a heavily reduced price, like those humble bundles. I don't know if you have seen those, but they'll put out a whole bundle of books like worth close to $500-$600 for whatever you can give. So, there are ways that material is put out at a reduced price, but even as it concerns just copy and pasting the subjects into YouTube and getting understanding of the subjects, that's not taking anything away from the author. What it is doing is that it's leading you to multiple resources that you can compare and contrast. And sometimes, like I said, the authors put their stuff up on YouTube for free all the time.
The last thing I'll say about this is that while Mike is right, but what you're seeing also is a mindset shift where everything is open source, just because that is the nature of the internet. Everything is kind of made to be free and out there, and that's kind of what you're seeing. You're seeing that play out.
So you're saying that people should just be free with themselves, kind of like a promiscuous learning model.
Wow. Okay, you went hippie on there, but yeah. but that's what's actually happening, whether we like it or not. And I understand what your standpoint is. It's just out there like that. Like I won't say it, but there's certain things people just don't pay for anymore on the internet, and you're stupid if you do. It's just it's the nature of the internet, really. That's the best way I can say it, and that could be a bit of a cop out.
And I think that there's also some mentality into it, right? Is that a lot of information sharing, and capitalism, kind of those two butting heads. People are trying to make a buck off of people trying to learn and advance technology, and the people's only barrier to their advancement in technology is money. And the fact that the originators of a lot of technologies never had the intention for profiting heavily off of certain technologies. you can see that rub there. So there are people, right, in our groups and mindsets that focus on give it free so that we can move forward with the advancement of technologies. But hey, you know,
don't blame me. Blame Linus Torvalds. You know, like
yeah,
blame him, and he'll come back and flick you off because that's just how he is.
Yeah.
All right, this one from opensource.com. 10 resources every sysadmin should know about. Everybody knows that sysadmins are impossibly busy people. Consequently, it sometimes seems they are superhuman. The sysadmin's dirty secret, the same one shared by many open source users, is that they don't actually do all the work it looks like they've done. One of the greatest tools in the sysadmin's kit is their ability to reuse work someone else has already done for them. A good sysadmin knows where to turn when there's a big job to be done, but nobody available to do it. If you're looking to work smarter, not harder, this is for you. A list of the top 10 resources every sysadmin should know about. Turnkey Linux. Turnkey Linux project is the app store of system administrators. Turnkey takes the popular open source components of infrastructure, installs them on a virtual server, creates an image of the install. Young Grizzly, could you not clean your AR-15 during the hangout, please? Thank you.
Oh, is that me? I think that might be me, actually.
Oh, are you cleaning your AR-15?
Oh, okay, thank God.
Well, there's two AR-15, so that makes an army. So,
oh, geez. Yeah, I got myself muted and no video. Okay, all right.
I'll go mute it. Yep.
In the days before containers, Turnkey mostly targeted virtualization engines, but with the advent of the cloud, the project also offers cloud apps. Whether you use a cloud version or virtual machines, installing infrastructure has never been easier, no matter what a department requests. You can satisfy and close a ticket by simply spinning up a virtual server and dropping Turnkey Linux into it or installing the app on Turnkey's cloud platform. Turnkey provides OVA, ISO, VMDK, QCOW2, Xen, and Docker images. So no matter what your infrastructure is based on, you can use Turnkey. So Turnkey is one. Subnet calculator. Ooh. If you're a new sysadmin, you might be struggling with the concept of subnets or the limits placed on routers to direct traffic within the network. Subnets can be confusing, and calculating subnets and mask are the resulting blocks of addresses that can be hard. Even for the experienced sysadmin used to configuring routers and who can calculate subnets in their head, it never hurts to double check the math. So subnet calculator is a tool that I think every IT person below management level should have. You can never go wrong with it. Cron Tab Guru. The Unix cron subsystem is a timer that runs commands at a specific time on a specific day. It's one of the many ways a sysadmin ensures that important tasks like backups, reminder emails, and log rotations happen automatically. Cron tabs, the configuration files that control cron, were once an arcane sequence of numbers, slashes, and asterisks that somehow translated to the representation of time. So this is actually good at the high level. It's a good tool to have at the high level. A rescue.
Yeah, definitely a lifesaver.
Yeah, a rescue and test in thumb drive. Be honest with yourself. The reason you got into the sysadmin racket in the first place was because you like to play with computers. Take your love of digital exploration and put it to good use with occasional pen test challenges. No matter how careful you've been while setting up your infrastructure, you probably overlook something, whether it's a configuration that's not as strict as it ought to be or a bug you couldn't have possibly known about. And sometimes it's not you. but shadow IT on your network that exposes a vulnerability. Regardless of the cause, it's your job to find the weaknesses, and Kali Linux is the most hyper-focused pen testing distribution available. This is true. We do keep Kali Linux on one of our devices, and we can run it on the network at any given time. So Samba, no matter your intentions as a sysadmin using open source, you're going to encounter a mixed environment of platforms that need to share files. Not everyone on your network is going to agree to just SSH copies of files to one another or to work in plain text so they can commit to Git. In fact, if you don't provide any easy method for users to share information, your users will find a way to do it anyways, and their solution will involve putting your company data on whatever free service they encounter online. This is true. Although Samba is not so much used as much anymore because of the cloud and S3 buckets and things like that, it's still used in legacy places. All right, Cockpit Web Console. For people unfamiliar with Linux terminal, it can be difficult to visualize what a server is, much less what it does. That can make it difficult for interns or transitioning Windows admins to help administer Linux servers. And it can make it difficult just to justify hardware purchases to management. Cockpit lets you monitor and modify properties of servers that otherwise would require SSH access and familiarity with Linux commands. Not only is it open source, but it has a rich API and is easy to extend. So if you need your web console to do more than what Cockpit does, you can develop your own interfaces to common tasks. Hex keys and screwdrivers. This is true. You should always have a Leatherman, I recommend, if you're going to be working on this type of stuff. Can't go wrong with a Leatherman. Telnet and OpenSSL. Those who experienced the old school internet may remember Telnet as a clunky, unwieldy, but effective interface for public Unix servers for big institutions. The New York Public Library used to make its card catalog available for online searches over the Telnet, and many in online MUD, multi-user dungeon, was accessed over the ancient protocol. Most people call Telnet a dead protocol and a dangerous command because it lacks encryption. And while its use is limited, it's still a great command for probing ports. Tell that to the bad guys, right? Cheat. Having a hard time remembering a command. Normally, you might resort to a man page, but some man pages have a hard time getting to the point. It's the reason Chris Allen Lane came up with the idea for a cheat command. The cheat command displays cheat sheets for common tasks in your terminal. It's a man page without a preamble. It cuts to the chase and tells you exactly how to do whatever you're trying to do. And if it lacks a common example, then that you think you ought to be included, you can submit an update. So this is how Gabe was referring to earlier, that he doesn't really remember all those commands. He has a script that basically acts as a cheat sheet for him. You guys have anything you want to add to this?
I've never heard of the cheat command. That sounds pretty awesome. I've heard of like man pages, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They use
man and then whatever. Yeah, man and then whatever the name of the actual command is, and then you can get the manual.
Yep. Like for some commands, it's like a -- help or something. But it can range, like it mentioned in the article, specificity cannot have an example. So you got to kind of Google around a lot of times. But yeah, the cheat seems kind of interesting. But it seems to be like a community supported, since you can submit things. So not exactly sure on how wide, I guess, stretching it is and the type of commands that they have. It'll be interesting though.
right, let me get to this next article.
Yeah, I don't really. I see they saying man pages are your best friend. I don't know, man. I don't got time to be scrolling through like a million commands and trying to understand which ones apply to what I'm trying to do. I typically just go straight to Google a lot of times. I look at the man page. If it's not for what I want, I'm like, all right, let me go to some examples.
The online GNU library is pretty good too, but yeah, sometimes the man pages really give you good examples. That's fine, why I like them. But sometimes you don't have them, and then, as you said, you have to do a dash help or dash dash or dash h or dash dash help, and that gives you a lot too.
Yeah.
All right, let me share my screen. We'll get out of this SysAdmin stuff and start talking about cybersecurity now. This one is from informationsecurity-magazine.com. Okay, we cannot stop cyber attacks, says over 40% of UK orgs.
Yeah.
More than 40% of UK organizations believe cyber attacks can infiltrate their network at every attempt, according to the new research from CyberArk. CyberArk surveyed 1,000 global organizations and detailed its findings in the CyberArk Global Advanced Threat Landscape Report 2019. The firm discovered that while UK organizations view privileged access security as a core component of an effective cybersecurity program, understanding has not yet translated to action. For example, only 45% of those polled have a privileged access security strategy in place for protecting business critical applications and cloud infrastructure, respectively, with even fewer having a strategy for DevOps or IoT. What's more, only 17% of respondents understood that privileged accounts, credentials, and secrets exist in containers. This is true. UK organizations ranked hackers 74%, organized crime 57%, hacktivists 46%, and privileged insiders 42% among the greatest threats to critical assets. Rich Turner, SVP, EMEA, CyberArk said, these findings are sober reading for businesses and cybersecurity practitioners. Despite the vast sums of being spent on cybersecurity, it's clear that businesses have very little confidence in their ability to defend themselves from cyber attacks, protect their most critical assets, or their value creation activities. UK businesses need to be on the front foot with security. Know what is more valuable to them, how it may be attacked, and how to protect it while ensuring their cyber strategy supports collaboration and innovation. Proactive cybersecurity strategies have to be implemented wherever critical data and assets live, specifically to manage and secure privileged credentials that are fundamental to their operation. This is the most valuable steps security teams can take to support wider businesses initiatives in today's digital economy. If you don't feel confident about your the ability to defend your own assets in your organization, you got a bigger problem.
I think that oh, I'm sorry, what's that?
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that it's sobering, but I think that they're being realistic. I mean, can you, if you have an APT, like an advanced persistent, so let me not to speak in acronyms. If you have a malicious actor or a hacker who is really on your neck, that's coming after your organization, yeah, you can't stop them. With enough time, with enough resources, with enough skill, you really can't stop them. The best thing that you can do is slow those individuals down. I mean, I think it's a realistic mentality to have.
It is very sobering, but it is very honest, as you said. I have to reiterate that, because the biggest thing is one person said this, and I always repeat it. Compliance should be a afterthought to security. So you should have your security in place or in such a standing to where you automatically are compliant, or there's little you have to do to become compliant. And a lot of people don't take that route. Now, what does this have to do with what we're talking about? A lot of places, they don't take compliance, or they don't take their own security seriously. Having certain open ports, or not doing updates on a regular basis, not having the staff to do that, all these things play into it and cause a problem for people. And pretty much that's why you're starting to see where Linux, Windows especially, they give you that option to do automatic updates. And it's almost like you really should do it, even though at times it may restart your system, or you might have stuff that breaks because of it. I stay away from it, but at the same time, it's probably a good thing if it's a system that is out there and open and may not be touched quite often.
Yeah. And I think it's also kind of some PTSD. Like they've seen their counterparts get just, or maybe themselves get just ravaged by something that can be very possible for their organization to be compromised by. So they're like, I know these guys, they got compromised, and they're spending way more than we are on security, or and they have a larger staff. And I think that, it's just, we can't stop them.
Well, a lot of that is due to incompetence, though. If you're doing your due diligence from a cybersecurity standpoint, this shouldn't even be a concern for you. You should know all of your assets. First of all, you should have a collection of all your assets from an inventory standpoint, so that you know exactly what you're trying to protect. And number two, securing is not just enough. You have to actually know what it is that you're securing for the purpose of compliance. So if you're trying to focus on GDPR and you're trying to be compliant with that, you have to understand that all of the data that is required to be protected and from a GDPR standpoint has to touch all these endpoints. Are you doing enough to protect, to secure all those endpoints in the data that's in transit and the data that becomes at rest? A lot of these organizations, at least according to this article, don't even understand that. So I go back to my original point that if you lack the confidence in your security posture, your security strategy, that's a bigger issue than the bad guys coming in. Whether the bad guys come in or not, to me, it's irrelevant. I can care less if they're on the outside knocking, trying to do brute force attempts. I want to know, can they get in? And if they can get in, let's secure that area. Let's make the data so disgustingly ugly that it's not readable to them and it's not usable to them. And let's make sure that all data that's in transit that comes at rest is actually secure from end to end. These are basic principles in daily operations that should have been taken into consideration if you're a CISO or director of operations, that should be your main focus. You should be reconvening at least twice a month on status updates or sit reps. What's the situation report on our good standing? What are we looking at alert wise? Are we having alert fatigue from false positives, or what is the sit rep on the whole entire SecOps? A lot of these companies are not spending the money because they don't want to. It's a choice. It's not that they just don't have it. Although I do think a lot of the times the security budget is being shared with the IT budget, and that becomes a problem in itself. If you only have like a $2 or $3 million budget and $2 million has been spent on IT for buying laptops and desktops and servers and stuff like that, then your security budget has already been eaten apart already. So you have to figure out a way to spend security onto the risk and compliance side and let them share the budget on that side or on the legal side, so that because legal has a bigger budget because they have lawyers and they can spend it.
Yeah, what I've noticed personally is a lot of people don't follow the hardening guides that come with the software. I was reading an article about another MongoDB server that was open to the public, and that got ransom notifications or ransom records inserted into some of the JSON objects for the database.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, so, are you guys not reading the hardening guides for this thing? Like, because they have them, and they tell you what to do, and they tell you what not to do, and they tell you how to, if you start something on MongoDB, it's pretty much wide open. So then all you have to do is just go in and start putting passwords to it. But does that say something about MongoDB and the fact that they should require passwords, or even have a script that runs? I think MySQL has something where you can actually go through some hardening steps, and it's an automated process. You run the binary, and then it starts going through and says, okay, you need a password here, you need to do this here, so on and so forth.
I think it's an interesting conversation, but I still see it as it's really little that someone can do. If you're being targeted by a skilled enough attacker who has enough time on his hands, who has the technology at his hands, even with the programmatic things in place, yeah, there is a lot of incompetence. Yeah, there is individuals who don't really understand the particular environment and how to protect those assets that they have. But at the same time, I mean, if somebody is skilled enough, then they can get in. I mean, I've seen it time and time again.
Even with the posture being all considerations taken into place for a security posture?
Absolutely. Like, where do you think 0 days come from? So 0 day attacks?
Yeah.
Or phishing.
Yeah.
Well, phishing is a different vector. That's a different vector.
I'm not talking about phishing exactly. Oh, okay. 0 day exploits, they appear because those who write the maliciousware, the malware, are ahead of those who protect against it. There's a higher motivation. There's at times a higher skill level. So it's the people will get in. And found malware in many different cases, many different places where people who were very much so compliant, like you mentioned, but we're even technically astute in knowing the data and the assets that they had on their network and talking to one another. People find ways. What they do, a lot of red teamers, what they do is they try to do things like what they say, like living off of the land. So they use particular processes within organizations and within networks. They study it, they try to understand it, and they blend in and they do what they have to do and they get out and they're quiet. So I don't even hacks or the best hackers that we've seen have been publicly exposed. I don't think we're informed of what their tactics are, because if we were, then that means that they weren't good enough. But can be a little bit of paranoia also put into that. That can be taken pretty far, but yeah.
All right. Let me get this next article. This one is from bleepingcomputer.com. Ransomware attack cripples power company's entire network. It's right up Gabe's alley. A ransomware attack that hit the South African electric utility city Power from Johannesburg this morning encrypted all of its systems, including databases and applications. The incident affects one of the largest power supplies in Johannesburg, owned by the city municipality. At the same time, customers reported multiple power outages on Twitter, but it had not been confirmed if they are related. The attack used an unknown ransomware strain, and it blocked some clients from buying electricity units using its prepaid electricity vending system, according to the company. The incident also affected our response time to logged calls, as some of the internal systems to dispatch and order material have been slowed by the impact, says the official Twitter account for the city of Johannesburg municipality. Dear customers, please note that we are currently experiencing a problem with our prepaid vending system. An automated voice message on the City Power's phone helpline says, as per Business Insider South Africa. So far, most of the IT applications and networks that were affected by the cyber attack have been cleaned up and restored. However, work is still continuing on some systems applications that were affected, including the uploading of invoices by our suppliers and logging faults by customers on the website. City Power put in place the following temporary measures and alternatives for its customers. Fault logging: customers may be able to use the website. As such, they are requested to log calls on their cell phones using citypower.mobi. Submitting invoices: suppliers seeking to submit invoices for payments should rather bring their invoices physically to the City Power offices in Buisan. Customers should not panic. None of their details were compromised. We apologize for the inconvenience caused to the people of City of Joburg, added the municipality. Please be patient with us. We expect to have everything back in order by the end of Thursday. Ransomware attacks have targeted a whole slew of other cities during the last 2 weeks, with LaPorte County, Indiana, having to pay $130,000 to recover data on encrypted computer systems. Lawrenceville police asking for FBI's help, as well as Northwest Indian College and New York City's Monroe College haven't had their IT systems impacted. Gabe, this is right up your alley. Please jump in on this.
Oh, sure. Yeah. A lot of, so the electrical grid, right? So that's South Africa. They're on a different grid than I think the rest of, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're on a completely different grid system than the rest of a lot of those South African other countries. They might be connected to a couple of others. But just, so this is within the area of what you call like industrial control systems. So like power grids and power generation and those things as it concerns oil refineries and industrial environments. These all kind of fall into that operational technology, OT, and ICS, industrial control system type of environment. So one thing that's very typical of a lot of, especially grid systems, is that they run a lot of old machines, old hosts. They have a very old infrastructure. So you might have, because a lot of times for like manufacturing facilities, they'll have like a diesel engine generator as a backup power, right? You might have Windows XP running the human machine interface for that diesel engine generator control system, right? So these things, and just like young Grizzly mentioned earlier, these are systems that aren't touched very often, right? So this is falling into that category. So people just pretty much plug and play, they let it run until they need it, and then they pretty much dust off the cobwebs from the keyboard connected to that system, and then they power it up. But these things at times can be connected. So with this particular situation, it looks like there was some type of internet-facing web application that was compromised. And it being connected to the internet, any type of commodity malware, ransomware is pretty much sending web scrapers out to the whole entire internet looking for vulnerable hosts. So it was something vulnerable within this publicly facing web application for that was for the grid system that was compromised by that ransomware. And as soon as it's compromised, a lot of this malware, it just starts to beacon back to whatever servers of the attackers. So what happens is so now a command prompt opens up for those who are the attackers, and boom, they have control of the encrypted data of the system, right? So they probably didn't even know that they were going to get a whole, nation's electrical grid web application compromised. So that's big money, right? So they just have them scraping out. So it's really interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. But what's very typical for a lot of these systems is that they run older infrastructure, old and vulnerable infrastructure. There's not a lot of updates done on a regular basis. There's not a lot of upgrades of technology. There's not a lot of upgrades of even hardware. So it's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, even for instance, Regions ATMs, they run on Windows 7. So if you ever have the pleasure of seeing one of them reboot and have your money in there, it sucks. you'll see that, it'll reboot and it'll have Windows 7. Customers that come to me all the time where they're saying, hey, Mike, I need help with this printer. I'm like, what operating system is this printer running? And sometimes it's a hot wire printer that cuts actual blocks of foam. And it's running Windows, sometimes 98, or an old software, even that predates XP. And, it's still functioning, but the manufacturer doesn't update, or they would have to actually spend millions of dollars to upgrade their infrastructure or that machine. And they're like, no, we're not doing that because it's going to cost too much. But guess what? It costs them sooner or later.
Yeah. Because what happens, it's very interesting. I think, Mike, you mentioned earlier with the IoT type of technologies, right? I mean, say, for instance, somebody gets a IoT-based idol, like a bear or whatever, right? A little bear that connects to the internet, that has these commands that you can update and everything, right? Say, for instance, years go by, and say, for instance, the thing hasn't been hooked up to the internet for a while. The kid got older. They don't really play with it anymore. Another kid turns it on. I mean, it has old software on it, right? This thing can be, and it's probably internet facing, right? So having these things in place, not only within the industrial control system environment, but even IoT, I think is very susceptible to lack of updates, running old software, and even people don't even talk about this, but firmware and embedded systems, right? Yep. Firmware needs upgrades also. So yeah, it's just really interesting.
Yeah, in terms of how we will respond to something like this, you would need to have a warm site set up where your services are available just at demand of a command prompt. And unfortunately, or actually not a command prompt, but the push of a button, meaning that you just need to power up the system from a replication standpoint. The fact that this could take them down that easily means that there's lack of due diligence on their side. So they're collecting all this money from these South Africans, for this power utility grid, but at the same time, they're not actually investing into their cybersecurity infrastructure at all. And they're paying a price for it, as they should. I don't feel sorry for them at all. I think that you make that kind of money and you don't actually do your due diligence on your side, you will end up with situations like this. Now, from a grid standpoint, as Gabe mentioned, a lot of these analog systems have not been touched in 20 years. They probably are still running Windows NT 4.0 or 4.5, and no one knows what to do with it, and no one wants to touch it. So therefore, it just sits there vulnerable. Whether it's because of vulnerable because it can be taken down from a hardware standpoint because the hardware is so aged, or because the software is so decrepit that anybody can walk in and basically poke at it and it will tip over.
Yeah, because what's been happening over the years is that a lot of times within these grid systems, right? What used to happen is that these organizations would take credit for what you call being air gapped. A lot of times these devices never touch the internet, never talk to internet devices, never talk to cloud infrastructure or anything. Weren't even networked at times. Like you were mentioning analog, these things are using RS-233 connectors to talk to one another. These things are sending electrical, like pretty much basic ones and zeros, using PLCs to talk and send commands to physical functions. But now, right, there's this adoption. They probably did this upgrade, making this web application thing on some, like put this web application in the environment, and probably didn't realize that it was connected to like it was a flat network probably. So they just gave it an IP address from the control system or whatever grid system that they have on that network, and that probably is what caused them to be vulnerable to that particular attack, because that malware probably just spreads to all network connected devices. So it probably didn't even have to jump over to different address spaces or anything, I bet. But I don't have information about that particular compromise. But I'm sure, right, if it's able to get to the internet, then it has to be able to spread to different resources and hosts within the environment. So yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. But that's the thing that they did. Before, they did not touch the internet. But now, because things are becoming more networked, more talked to, people want statuses, these old antique type of systems are now talking to the internet, and the internet is listening, and the internet is looking for them. So it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me get to this next article.
I think I might have to dip out after this one.
All right, no problem, man.
Yep.
Incredibly hard cybersecurity staffing is accelerating adoption of automation. Awareness of cybersecurity threats may be increasing overall, but businesses across Australia and New Zealand are still struggling to get the staff they need to respond to those threats, according to analysis of the local skills market that found over a quarter of organizations lack the ability to develop cybersecurity talent they need. Fully 61% of the 200 cybersecurity professionals responding to the recently released Hayes Cybersecurity Talent Report said their organizations was finding it very difficult to recruit talent, cybersecurity talent, with just 5% saying that doing so was easy. It is still incredibly hard to staff roles in the cyber function, the report notes, and even harder to retain them whilst there is a war for talent going on. Some 56% of respondents said they had responded to difficulties finding cybersecurity staff by upskilling existing IT staff in security areas, where 44% were tapping professional networks, 29% were hiring university security graduates, and 11% were sourcing cybersecurity talent from overseas. Just 25% of the respondents said they had or would consider sponsoring skilled cybersecurity professionals from overseas, despite a recent analysis finding that temporary skilled visas programs are a net positive for Australia. So what's happening here is that we talked about this before, that at least a week or so ago, sysadmins are becoming more involved in cybersecurity than not, because most organizations lack a true cybersecurity officer on the as a part of the roster. So they divvy all of these responsibilities up. Your network admins or your network engineers are taking on the network security of the firewalls. Your sysadmins are looking at the endpoints and taking over that portion of security. And then maybe you might have a risk and compliance officer or a risk compliance analyst that's focusing on the vulnerability aspect of security. So now they've hit all three areas of the CIA, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So your sysadmins are worried about high availability. Your network engineers are focusing on the confidentiality, and your risk and compliance people are looking at the integrity aspect of all of these areas. So I say all that to say this, that it's hard to find good cybersecurity talent because most companies are unwilling to pay for the talent that's available. A top cybersecurity guy is gonna demand six figures up front. There is no getting around that. You can cultivate some people to become better, to become entry level and do a lot of this work, but no one wants to sit in an operations role for the rest of their career, because they're only seeing one side of the square, and they need to see all sides. So
absolutely, I think that it was funny. I was talking to a CISO a couple of weeks ago, and it's funny because he has so we were doing again an engagement and kind of just evaluating their systems and situations and even their program overall. And he was telling me that hey, they got a young guy, pretty much fresh out of college. He's probably about 23, 24 or so, and he's really passionate about cybersecurity, right? And he was saying, yeah, he's really good, but I don't think I can keep him. Like they're like he was saying it'll be difficult because the career progression for cybersecurity in this organization isn't there. He said he can't pay him what experienced cybersecurity professionals have or make because his budget just isn't there. And he recognizes that probably within 2 or 3 years, he'll lose him to somebody who was able to give him the career advancement opportunities that he should have. And I think that's a thing too, right? Not only is there lack of staffing and there's not a lot of people in the field, and just like you said, they cannot keep people who are really good unless they are competitive. Like you can't, yeah. After a while, you just, like you said, people who are good at least starting off at six figures with a couple of years in or so. I would say someone who's probably around 2 years, 2.5 years or so, can in a particular area of cybersecurity, if they're really good at a particular area, they can start off at six figures easy. Even somebody who is like in risk management and compliance. I had a coworker at a previous job role. She was at risk management and compliance. I think she was somewhere around 110 or so, maybe. And we were doing government contracts. Yeah, we were doing government contracts. She was not technical at all. She knew how to do the risk management framework from beginning to end, all the documentation, know how to do the POAM, know how to do everything from beginning to end. And she was able to command a 6-figure plus salary.
Yeah.
So
it's a niche market for her. Because so few people that can actually do it. Military turns out a lot of cybersecurity people because SANS training and stuff like that, they get a lot of access to that. But when it comes to your average enterprise, they just don't see the necessity in this, and that's why I say I don't feel sorry for a lot of these companies because they didn't do the due diligence like they were supposed to.
Right. I see it quite a bit where they just don't take it seriously. And then also, I do really believe that cybersecurity nowadays should be outsourced and then vetted because what you would see is a very mature, well-balanced, very attentive SOC or even a security team, if you will be on top of a lot of these things. And they're reading those NSA government threat vulnerabilities. They're doing all these bug tracking. Some of the people in there are doing bug bounties for side money, and it's kind of like iron sharpens iron in those environments.
I know guys who have been fired for bug bounties because it exposed leadership for how incompetent they are.
Right.
Really.
Right.
So
and the thing is, like, you want to get rid of those guys, but it's like, it's like, why would you get rid of that? That's such a valuable. I've seen it even personally here at a data center where they actually question is like, yo, who is this guy? Why is he doing this? Like, and it was openly said. And now that guy's making 70. I think he's making 70K, and then he helps people make a minimum of 70K, and he's doing even more.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's very doable. I think if you just and I think that I don't think that the numbers online are skewed, but I think that if you focus in and become good at something, right? And I don't think it's so much only necessarily getting a certification, which certifications are really good. It's not so much only in getting a job, which jobs are good. But I think one thing that's most important is that do I possess skills in cybersecurity that will help an organization, right? Are things that are in kind of that will help an organization conduct business correctly, right? Because I think that cybersecurity overall, especially from the C-suite kind of level, is looked at as a business, or should be seen as a business enabler. So things like, okay, I have malware in my system. How can I get information from those particular infected hosts and be able to stop an attack from happening? Say, for instance, it's a denial of service attack. What would I do in that event, right? Or what can I do as it concerns analyze or increasing the defense in depth within my organization? What security layers can I implement in order to make it more difficult for an attacker to get to my most critical assets? How do I categorize my most critical assets? Which things should I put greater protections around in comparison to others? This goes beyond that of just getting a certification. This goes beyond that of just getting a job. It's becoming a solution, right? It's becoming someone who's able to develop solutions for organizations. So I think that should be something that a lot of people should focus on, rather than just saying, okay, I got this cert, I need to get this job. So,
well, the cert is a benchmark, right? So certs serve as the benchmark for knowledge applied versus skills applied. Only certain certs will focus on skills such as OSCP and things like that. If somebody has, let's say, a security plus, I don't really need to ask them the most basic rudimentary questions such as what is port 80 or port 443 and stuff like that. In an interview, I don't need to ask them that question because they should already have that knowledge. So now the question is, how do you defend, right? So what are the blue team skill sets that we're looking for, and based on the interaction that you have with this candidate, do I think that they're a viable prospect for actually grooming to teach them, right? Because I don't care what organization you go to, you have to be upskilled or cross-skilled and or cross-trained on a lot of their business operations, whatever endpoint security solutions and things like that, SIMs and things like that. None of them are the same, or even though they have the basic principles, they're not always the same. So everybody needs to be cross-trained on that. The question is, can I cross-train this person on that who has the certification? For some certifications, I do think that is the determiner, determining the thing to determine whether or not they can be hired for that role. Because if they have a security plus, if they have network plus, if they have Linux plus, I could skip past all of the basic stuff and just have a conversation, and then I can go from there. But if they don't have that, I have to do my due diligence based on whatever's on their resume. If you've been working at Dunkin' Donuts, heating up bagels and stuff like that, I don't know if I really want to have a conversation with you right now. Maybe if you went to a boot camp or something like that and came back, then we can have a conversation. But I can't waste my time talking to somebody who heats up bagels and whatnot at Starbucks or something like that. I just have to look at better candidates, and those with the certification are the ones I'm going to go have a conversation with.
See, and I think that's actually changing. Like, I don't think that is necessarily wrong as a benchmark, but a lot of that is very much so changing as it concerns people won't even have a conversation with you if you don't have a cert. Like, I got a whole bunch of certs, but the principal, so I'm a senior consultant in my organization. The principal consultant has 0 certifications, but he's extremely well known within the industry, right? And I think that, so kind of how you mentioned, right? Security plus, net plus, A plus, dope certs, they give a very good foundation of information. But just as we were reading the article, how many like bundles, like certification bundles, training bundles for those 3 certifications are out there, right? Mm-hmm. Those are good, right? But what makes you different from another candidate? I mean, who hasn't gotten A plus, network plus, and security plus? How can you be competitive? Because if you're applying for a job that has those particular certifications down and the other guy has it too, it's very likely that the other guy will have those same things too. What is a differentiator in you and that other person with 3 certs? And I think that is
GitHub repo.
Yeah, yeah. So boom, right? A GitHub repo and some type of expression of the work that you've done, or even you being involved with, say, for instance, some type of voluntary organization. You helped to set up the network and the servers within these environments, and you were able to speak about the security-related challenges that you had in that particular environment. What are some of the like you actually putting your hands on the keyboard and you producing some output of work to show, rather than just certifications. Like, I'm telling you, I know a lot of the tech companies, they don't care nothing about no certs. Like I'm telling you, I had like 7 or 8 certs. When I interviewed for like Mandy and FireEye, they didn't ask me anything about a certification. They didn't ask me anything about a certification
because they have a different responsibility that they're looking for. And that might be true for Mandiant.
Yeah,
but that might be true for Mandiant. But what happens when you go to Fidelity Investments? What happens when you go to Bank of America, JP Morgan, and they're looking for these certs? That's a different conversation that they're trying to have. And that's what that's what most of the organizations that I kind of hang out with on a weekly basis, those are the conversations that they're having, because they can't find anybody, because there's no way to determine what this person knows, because you haven't really, you can't assess them, because you're not even, there's no barometer, there's no benchmark there. That's what the certifications are for. They're that benchmark. So if they had a CISSP, I might be more inclined to have a conversation with that person rather than the person who doesn't have it. Now, if the person that doesn't have it has an extensive background, that's different. All right, they're in a different role, and they're probably applying for a different role anyways, because they have that skill set. They just need the certification. But when I was at Dell, they do require that you have at least one cert per year. So,
but I think that's part of the problem, because a lot of people focus on those certifications who are trying to get into the industry, but they don't focus on the practical skills and the ability to actually do a job. Yeah, sure, you're trained on how to do a job for a particular organization, but you don't want to be limited to doing that job for that organization. You want to be able to be more well-rounded and more abreast of issues within the industry and capabilities for you solving those issues in the industry. I think those differentiators are those individuals who go beyond the service.
Yeah, but what's going on in the industry from a gas and utilities perspective is different than what's happening on Wall Street. Completely different environment, different.
How so?
Different, because if you're talking about decrepit infrastructure, that's different than what's happening inside Bank of America's high scalability containers in the cloud and things of that nature. That's a completely different conversation. It's a different. What happened?
Huh?
Say that again.
I said, but they're both being compromised by ransomware. They're both being targeted by a lot of the same threats. So,
well, the threats might be different. Ransomware is one thing, but what happens when you have just a breach of someone stealing credentials? That's a different conversation, because you have a whole entire different stack to protect against.
Well,
if you're a healthcare organization, your most valuable aspect is not going to be your infrastructure, but your data. If the PHI has been compromised or it's been stolen, you're screwed. But if you're a big utility company and someone knocked out your power grid application, that's a different conversation.
Well, I think both of you guys are right. And sorry for
No, go right ahead.
Well, I think both of you guys are right. What I've seen personally, and this goes to how I actually help people make the decision on where they want to be in IT. I ask them simply, do you want to do the work, or do you want to manage the people that do the work? Mm-hmm. And if you want to do the work, get certifications. If you want to manage the people that do the work, go ahead and get your degree. And I would say kind of apply it to this as well. Certain shops, depending on their size, will favor certain methods of learning. So smaller shops will say, screw it, I don't really care what cert you have. Can you show me that you can do it? Because they'll take their time and, go through it. But larger shops, Fidelity, Chase, or, larger institutions, they'll say, okay, I want these as base level, because I have thousands of people. I was going to say millions. I have thousands of people applying all the time, and I need to cut through, I need to cut through the weeds to actually find the blossoming flower, if you will. And I think that's what happens quite a bit. And then at certain levels in certain departments, you'll see where both of those strategies are employed.
Mm-hmm. So I think that I think that we're agreeing on some things, but maybe I may be not communicating exactly what I'm saying. I think more of what I'm saying is that beyond certs is what differentiates you from another person as it concerns your employability and your ability to solve problems. And I would also like to say salary. I mean, someone who has a couple of certs working for a large organization, they're not able to command the same salary for somebody who has knowledge and has experience, has exposure in different places, right? Beyond certifications. Like I don't think a lot of times people even mention like writing articles, individuals speaking at conferences, you contributing to GitHub repositories, you being involved with training and learning organizations. Like these things are really the differentiate. I'm telling you, these things are the differentiators. They will pay a person with a couple of certs over, I guess they'll keep them at a salary band 50 to 70, kind of how they mentioned it, 50 to 70 to 80K, right? For years, right? At a Fidelity or something. But then if you go into something like consulting or even something beyond that, I mean, you just command a higher salary, right? A lot of times maybe start at that 120 level because you're literally able to solve problems of organizations rather than just acquiring certifications to say that I know how to do these things. I'm just, yeah, just speaking from experience, man. I'm telling you, because it's different. Because I have a lot of peers who are like, oh yeah, I'm working in this role, this and that. I got these 50 certs. I'm like, that's dope, man. Like, and then yeah, but I'm struggling. I'm like, dang, man. Like, why aren't you continually growing, like, and continually learning? And to a lot of people is getting more certifications. I think that's a problem. So go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say that when I was referring to Dell, and even HP can be tossed into this as well, they give you a voucher that is that expires within a year that you have to use that voucher because the company already paid for it. So they already have a certification budget. So that's why I mentioned earlier that those people who do go out and get the certifications who work at Dell and these other organizations, they tend to have these certifications because they have to get it. It's mandatory that you go out and get a cert every year because they have a budget for it. And most managers or most teams are graded based on their continuous learning, right? So they go out and go take SANS training and they get a GX cert, and that becomes a part of their resume and their portfolio. Plus, it looks good to the organization that you have your guys or your people in a continuous learning environment. Now you compare that to somebody who's applying for a job. You say, well, the guy with the certs, what differentiates them from the other person? Well, we don't know that until we actually have a conversation. And for some people who are trying to get into IT, the only way for them to actually get a conversation is from having a cert, right? So if they're trying to break in and do help desk, the guy with the A+ versus the guy who doesn't have an A+ is going to get the call back. That's just the way it is. I mean, they need those baseline credentials up front.
Well, this also goes into your soft skill, if you will, argument or point that you made. Actually, is a better way of saying that. Daniel, I think it was Daniel Tucker in the chat was mentioning, writing articles on Medium, and part of being discovered and putting yourself out there, because that's one way he wants to express himself. I personally like GitHub documentation and visual documentation of my projects, and that's how I feel that I can properly express myself. But actually, that could be a part of your social skills if you can, or your soft skills, by being able to express yourself and express what you're doing in various ways, whether it be GitHub, Twitter. Renald Terry mentioned that. So, and then also anything that you've worked on and the documentation within your code itself, that could be a good thing.
Yeah, I guess I just see so often people focus on certifications in order to get into a field, but then they at times may not be able to get a job, or that they get a job at a very low paying rate and they're stuck there until they can move to something else. And I'm like, you haven't really learned anything beyond your particular job, right? You haven't become greater in the field of security. And then they a lot of times feel stuck in a lot of organizations. And I don't know, I just always try to encourage people to step beyond that organization and look to acquire additional skills and capabilities. So
I also think that that's a cultural issue within an organization. If the organization is not advancing its peers, then there's a problem within the culture of the organization itself.
No, it is
yes
our responsibility to advance ourselves. I'm not the organization to advance me. No.
If you work for, I'm using Dell again. If you work for Dell, you move from an analyst role to a senior analyst role to a principal role. This happens over a course of 3 to 4 years or 3 to 5 years. So there's no way a person is going to stay at an analyst role for 5 years and not reflect on the management of the operation. That's a reflection on them. That means that they're not advancing their people from what it is that they're doing during their one-on-ones every quarter. So something is wrong there. And
no, that's advancing in that work role. That's
no,
not.
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. If you're in the organization and the organization is not advancing their peers, then that's a problem. Now, if a person is stuck at an analyst role, it's not always their fault. I've seen Black males get passed over who do have the skill set for a white male who doesn't have the skill set, just because of that that overarching monkey on their back of racism within the organization. Now, they will upskill the white male, but they won't invest into the Black male. So therefore, the Black male has either no choice other than to stay or take flight, and that's not fair to them. So sometimes when we criticize these people, we have to be mindful that this is still a problem in the tech field. We've covered probably about maybe 10 to 15 articles about Facebook and Google, Black people working there, and they having these same issues, and then they're not anywhere near cybersecurity or anything like that. They're in different DevOps roles and whatnot, and they're being passed over as well. So we know that there's some semblance of bias or just outright racism.
I think that there's some flaw in that kind of thought process, especially as it concerns that of working for an organization and they're moving you from an analyst, right, to an engineer, to a principal. Mm-hmm. I think that the problem with that is that they're there to move you up in that particular role mm-hmm. for that organization, in that job function. Mm-hmm. I don't, as it concerns continuous learning, I never put my dependency upon an organization to upskill me or to put me forward. Yeah, I'm going to get the training and the job role growth that they're providing to me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But if I'm seeing other areas that are important, if I'm looking at other things that I desire to do, I need to take accountability and I need to own my own training. I need to own my own learning rather than, oh, they won't promote me to an analyst. Oh, they won't bring me up, but they brought this other guy up. You know what owning that looks like? Owning that looks like going to a different organization and taking all that training that they put in you with you. Like, you don't, like, this is such a market and a field that's in such demand. You can go almost anywhere to any state and leave an organization that is not treating you and not providing to you what you desire in your particular role. So I think there is a bit of ownership. Yes, there is racism. There is prejudice within organizations and corporations. But it's nothing holding you there. It's nothing making you stay. It's nothing making you stay in that role. And it's nothing making you stay in that organization. You can leave and you can take ownership of your own career path. And I've done this on multiple occasions. So that's the part that I think I see there.
I do agree with that. And what I would say, especially to Black men, is to, actually, I really just want to say, reiterate or go over what you just said. I copy that. But what I would say is move to places where you're going to be a little bit more valuable and make yourself also more valuable as well. And ensure that value is known. And if it's not respected, do things like even getting out there and doing your own consultancy. And I'll leave it at that.
Yes.
All right, let me get to this next article and then we'll let Gabe go.
Okay. Yeah, I actually have to jump off now. I'm actually about to get some food in a minute, but thanks for having me, everybody.
Hey, have a good one, bro.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, this one is from Secure World Expo, a cybersecurity degree. Do you need it? Is it worth it? You're either thinking about making your current cybersecurity job a career, or you're thinking about landing a role in cybersecurity for the first time. Both are smart moves according to the data. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics expects the number of these jobs to expand twice as fast as other industries by 2026. But with jobs opportunities in cybersecurity on the rise, do you really need a degree to get started? And if you're already working in the field, can furthering your cybersecurity education also advance your career? Not only are cybersecurity careers on the rise, but there is already a massive labor shortage. According to the ISC squared, the cybersecurity workforce lacks 2.93 million qualified professionals. That's great news for anyone hoping to enter the field or make a career in it. What does qualified really mean in terms of employment? The data revealed that 93% of job postings called for candidates with at least a bachelor's degree. This means that earning a cybersecurity degree would help qualify you as the COVID cybersecurity professionals employers are desperately seeking. And learn how to become backs this up. While it is impossible to find certain entry-level cybersecurity positions with an associate's degree, most jobs require a 4-year bachelor's degree in cybersecurity or a related field such as information technology or computer science. Coursework in programming and statistics combined with the classes in ethics and computer forensics prepare students with the technical and analytical skills required for successful careers in cybersecurity. If you are a fresh face hoping to enter the cybersecurity profession, it looks like 4-year degree is a solid first step. Not only does it provide the education you need, it also gives you more job security in this rapidly evolving field. Rasmussen College recommends a bachelor's degree for anyone seeking quick entry into cybersecurity careers. The data reveals that many employers tend to prefer candidates with at least 3 to 5 years of experience. That means the sooner you get your foot out of the door with a degree, the sooner you'll begin acquiring invaluable work experience that can help you propel you further in the field. Once you have 3 years under your belt, you'll be eligible for thousands of new positions. Going back for the master's, while your bachelor's degree is a great first step, higher degrees can help you really hone your cybersecurity qualifications. And if you've been working in the field for a few years, going back to school later can reap even greater benefits. Cybersecurity education identifies 4 reasons to pursue a master's degree. 1, you'll have the opportunity to change careers. 2, you may find you'll have more job opportunities. 3, you'll gain respect. And 4, you can increase your salary. Going after a master's degree in cybersecurity can speed your access to higher tiers, titles, and paychecks available in the field. Where am I at? However, some CISOs have moved up from roles related to cybersecurity, even if their degree was originally in something else. In our recent story on 4 cybersecurity leaders and how they got there, Sharon Burgers, SVP and CISO of BCD Travel, talked about her move from compliance to cybersecurity. Kind of early in my own career, I started off doing compliance. So I'd be hired to do compliance and do some auditing. I had a lot of customer inquiries and no one really knew what to do with them or what the environment looked like. Hey, and it was a person who I still considered my mentor today who said, hey, you shouldn't do it. I mean, you should do it. I said, well, I don't know. I don't know if I know all this stuff. He said in response, just do it. Do your best, work everything out, outline what you don't know and go from there. And I did that. Burgess has both a bachelor's and a master's degree, but neither one of them are in cybersecurity. Her work experience provided the needed bridge to her eventual CISO role. So what option is your best for cybersecurity education and career? This article kind of points back to what we were just discussing about certifications and education, and the idea that you need more than just a certification, or you need more than just a degree, is being challenged here with cited sources. So you can, do all the GitHubs and things like that. That might work in some areas, but for those trying to get into cybersecurity, this is the go-to role. The idea is to get a bachelor's degree. The idea is to get the master's degree. If you want to move into a more professional role and outside of consulting and technical analysis, if you want to be in a more leadership role, this is the way possible. Now, this isn't the only way possible, but this is the go-to way that most of the industry is demanding. Most jobs require at least a bachelor's degree. If you don't have a bachelor's degree, high probability that the HR system is going to skip right over you. If you don't have a certification of some sort, then they have nothing to really gauge you on. These were the points that I was making before, and this article kind of confirms that. If Young Grizzly is still on, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I also say, as I said before, like I believe both of you guys are right, and it just depends on the situation. But especially with cybersecurity, let's break down what's necessary for cybersecurity. And I'd almost pose some of this as a question, and there might be some questions I'd like you to fill in. In cybersecurity, isn't documentation important? And I'd ask that.
Say that one more time.
Isn't documentation important in cybersecurity?
It is to a certain extent.
So usually with documentation, it requires you to have decent writing skills, know certain formats, and also be able to express what you're trying to say in some cases a succinct manner, or maybe even a more detailed manner. Now that plays into something where you would get these skills, writing skills, especially in your bachelor's degree, in a greater than a 2-4 year degree. And possibly even higher than that, masters and so on and so forth. So that's where, like, hey, cybersecurity, I can understand why they would need a degree. Now, if you're getting into system administration, that's where, hey, listen, your certifications would make a lot of sense. And your degree, it would probably be better to actually have real world experience with these things, working with Open LDAP, working with Microsoft Active Directory and how it works with integration, how to upgrade your Forest to the 2012, 2016 version of the Forest schema, if you will. But you have to learn that, or maybe learn that either while on the job or through certification manuals, and especially labs, and doing it. So I think I definitely think in cybersecurity, it makes a lot of sense to actually have a degree, and I could see why they would want it. But hopefully, the person that's actually talking to you understands why you do, and then also sometimes where not having it is not so much of a hindrance, but that's, I guess on a case-to-case basis, and you might get that by a social, I guess you would say, social connections that you've made with other people by going to meetups and such, and they know that you know what the hell you're talking about because you've done a talk on it or written good articles that actually hold up, and that's it.
All right, this next one is from helpnetsecurity.com. Cloud adoption and security are not mutually exclusive. As organizations continue to adopt cloud services to achieve their desired business objectives, many don't realize that the thing that makes cloud computing great, speed, agility, easy implementation, and scalability, also make it a nightmare for many security departments. The paradigm of cloud computing goes hand in hand with a cultural change that is much bigger than the shift to the cloud itself. Avi Shua, CEO and co-founder of Orca Security, told HelpNet Security. Organizations and individuals alike expect to get things done here and now. Business owners expect new features to be out in a matter of weeks. The very same features that they were willing to wait months for only a few years ago. Naturally, this dramatically reduced the time organizations are willing to devote to security as part of the development process. This is very true. Before the advent of cloud computing, a security review taking 2 weeks out of a 6-month project seemed acceptable. Now, when the entire project needs to be up and running in a month, 2 weeks spent just on security seem obstructively long. This is very true. Nobody, including security professional, wants to be perceived as the one who is holding back the organization's progress, Shua notes. and advises security teams to prioritize their requirements and be clear on which are a must and which are just nice to have. At the same time, make sure you minimize your reliance on other teams when you verify the organization's security. The responsibility is on you. You need to be certain that the organization is secure, and any additional dependency allows for mistakes that will prevent you from doing so, he notes. Simultaneously, the security team must have complete visibility into all companies' assets. What are they, where are they, what software they are running, and what data is stored on them. Who can access them, and most importantly, whether they are configured securely and patched for critical issues. One thing is the same in the pre and post cloud world. Most breaches happen when assets aren't managed well enough. Security teams must have the means to assess the security posture of all of the assets throughout the network technology stack, starting at the cloud infrastructure levels of the various providers via the operating system applications and the business data stored and processed on them, he says. So what's happening here is that and the article is very true. And what they're stating is that security seems to be the holdup for a lot of organizations trying to get cloud adoption. And when they do adopt the cloud, they don't want security in the way. They think that the cloud is inherently secure on its own, and that's a false narrative.
What I would add to this is three things: finding internal holes within your organization, security holes, or ways that data can be leaked out, is going to make you a lot more valuable. Second, being the Swiss Army knife of the tech world is becoming more and more the norm. So kind of being, but it also gets you into the mindset of a consultant, because even myself as a consultant, I have to know a little bit of everything and know where what resources to touch on to get certain things done. And the last thing, and this is something that I do myself every so often, I do parallel security checks while I'm or I parallel writing code with security checks. So while I'm writing something, I research the best way to write it and make sure that it is somewhat secure. And then I know as I'm writing my code that security is in mind. Also, usability and increased functionality, or or wanting to increase functionality later on. So to people that say, "Hey, I want to learn this," or "Should I learn this?" I'm like, "Hey, learn it all, and then maybe specialize in something that you have a passion for, because you're gonna have to be a person that knows hardware and then also have the software to utilize and take advantage of that hardware."
Mm-hmm. All right. All right, this one's from infosecurity-magazine.com. Malware cited as exploit most seen by SOC teams. Working in Security Operations Center is a growing, increasingly more painful because of an increasing workload and alert fatigue, according to new research improving the effectiveness of Security Operations Center. Respondents cited malware 98%, known vulnerabilities 80%, and spear phishing 69%, and insider threat 68% as the most identified exploits in the SOC. Most respondents rate their SOC effectiveness as low, and almost halfway it is not fully aligned with business needs. Problems such as lack of visibility into the network and IT infrastructure, a lack of confidence in the ability to find threats, and workplace stress on the SOC team are diminishing its effectiveness. This is very true. In fact, 65% of respondents said that these pain factors would cause them to consider changing careers or leaving their job. This is very true. And those functions exist even in those organizations that consider the SOC essential to their cybersecurity strategy, according to the report. SOCs are struggling, and most of the participants rank their SOCs effective as low, with nearly half reporting the SOC is not fully aligned with business needs. As a result of these problems, 78% of respondents say the mean time to resolution, MTTR, can be weeks to months, even years. Only 22% of the respondents say resolution can occur within hours or days. 42% of the respondents say the average time to resolve is months or years, according to the report. In addition to the lack of visibility, threat hunting was also ranked as a top challenge. This is very true. Threat hunting teams have a difficult time identifying threats because they have too many IOCs, indicators of compromise, to track, too much internal and traffic to compare against IOCs, lack of internal resources and expertise, and too many false positives. More than half of the respondents rate their SOC's ability to gather evidence, investigate, and find the source of threats as ineffective. The primary reason are limited visibility into the network, traffic, lack of timely remediation, complexity, and too many false positives, the report said. So this is very true. Alert burnout, or what they say in the article is alert fatigue, is alert burnout. And a lot of the times, you have high turnover rates in cybersecurity because people just get tired of dealing with the same unresolvable issues, and remediation times taking so long. I have seen this myself. Been in the field for some years now, and I can tell you that a lot of people who are in cybersecurity requires a lot of patience. Which is one of the reasons why it's so hard to find qualified people. And because of that, seats don't get filled, and CISOs complain, and organizations are under threat. The end.
What I see quite often, and this has been repeated so many times on this stream and many others when we talk about this, it's just sad that security is such an afterthought. And by it being an afterthought, then it's only at the forefront of a CEO or a software developer's mind when he has to make a public statement about how all your data was lost. I've been on many, even just personal shopping, and you see some e-commerce sites, and they want you to put your credit card information, and there's not even an HTTPS cert applied to the actual website that you're actually putting this information in. And I'm looking at it like, holy crap. Okay, well, I want the shirt. It's like, but you see it. It's such an afterthought. And in some cases, some people just don't know. But we have to become more educated, more knowledgeable, and educate everyone at every level.
Mm-hmm. I personally think that our artificial intelligence is going to make up for the lack of human resources, human capital for cybersecurity. So rather than having a security operations center manned by a variety of people, you'll just have artificial intelligence do a bulk of the work, and then you just need the few people to triage, and that will be the end of it. We do that currently right now. We rely on a lot of AI.
You definitely will be replaced by an API of some sort. And that's kind of the way things are going. You're seeing it even in Cisco switching, where now you have APIs and they're becoming more and more robust to where you can actually start querying them and start doing things and automating certain tasks, which is great, but also, people are losing their jobs over it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think we're a little bit ways off from a cybersecurity perspective. And the reason being is that too many false positives, like the article mentioned, way too many false positives, too many you know, too many times have we responded to an alert, and it was based on, you know, the fact that somebody failed to log in, not because not because the bad guys were trying to get in, but just the fact that someone failed to log in. So things like that become a problem for your bottom line when you're talking about alert burnout and things like that, and artificial intelligence falsely reporting that these situations are even happening. Kind of like a motion detector, kind of like a floodlight motion detector on your house. It didn't. It's reporting that you know, or it keeps the light keeps turning on because a car drove down the street, but not because someone was actually on the premises.
Right, and you see a lot of NOC personnel get burned out over it as well, myself included, where you get a lot of these tickets that is like that. You know, people will say, "Hey, listen, shouldn't we follow up on that?" No, it's a crap ticket. It's a crap event. It's going to return here in a couple minutes. So sometimes, you know, you really get burnt out over that.
Mm-hmm. We did a lot of tuning, so we over the last 90 days, so we're down from 1,000 alerts a day down to maybe about maybe a dozen, make it a dozen alerts a day. So
wow,
we're good, man.
I'm
We're
sure
good
that's a
now.
lot of work.
Yeah, that took a lot of work, man. It took a lot of research, a lot of whiteboarding and threat modeling and stuff like that. So a lot of asset management. This next one is from howtogeek.com. Should you pay if you get hit by ransomware? It might be your worst nightmare. You turn on your PC only to discover it's been hijacked by ransomware that won't decrypt your files unless you pay up. Should you? What are the pros and cons of paying off cyber criminals? It's a difficult problem and one with many layers. To access your files, you might need to pay a hefty ransom. And then there's the issue of cryptocurrency, which is ransomware's preferred method of payment. Unless you're already a crypto investor, you might have no idea how to begin the process of getting a Bitcoin account, and the clock is ticking. And don't forget, if you pay, there's a decent chance you won't be able to reclaim access to your files anyways. There are also ethical questions about paying off criminals. As any good economist will tell you, any behavior you reward, you'll invariably get more of. So what should you do? Oh, it's really simple, said Raj Samani, chief scientist and McAfee fellow. Don't pay. That's an easy perspective when they are not your files being held at virtual gunpoint, but still, it's probably the right call. There's a reason the US has an official policy not to negotiate with terrorists. And given into ransomware demands does appear to encourage criminals. Paying out has given rise to ransomware as a service, contends Sean Allen, a cybersecurity consultant who frequently writes about ransomware. In recent years, ransomware has become such a successful and lucrative business that hackers have packaged turnkey ransomware kits. These allow criminals with little or no technical experience to launch their own ransomware attacks with ease. According to Symantec's 2019 Internet Security Threat Report, there was 400% increase in the number of attacks from 2017 to 2018. Arguably, much of that growth is due to the number of people in organizations that have paid ransom. Of course, not all experts take the high road. Todd Weller, Chief Security Officer of Bendura Cyber, had said this: the practical aspect of ransomware is that the cost of not paying the ransom is materially greater than the cost of paying it. The logic is clear. This is especially true if you're an administrator of, say, a healthcare facility like one of the 16 hospitals crippled in 2017 by the WannaDecryptor ransomware virus. You might have little choice but to pay. Less black and white is when a municipal agency is a victim, like the pair of Florida cities that recently paid a combined $1.1 million in ransomware attacks. One could argue that no lives were at stake, but why double down on bad IT practices by rewarding criminals. It's a divisive issue. For this article, I polled 30 cybersecurity experts and consultants, and a full third was unwilling to issue a categorical no to whether you should ever pay. Instead, they equivocated around questions about the lost files and weighing the cost of the ransom against the value of the data. But Dror Lira, founder of the security company Coronet, summed it up this way: the cybersecurity industry is saturated with consultants encouraging people to pay. This is not only poor and lazy advice, but it can actually prove harmful to others, as payment encourages hackers to come back again in the future. So I'm not going to read this whole thing because I think a lot of this has to do from an enterprise standpoint of not understanding where your data is and not understanding what to do to secure your data. If I'm an organization, I want to make my data at a height so high that the bad guys who are too short to get to that point, to get to that height, can't access it. It's out of their reach. What's happening with a lot of these organizations is that the data is just sitting in plain view for the most part, despite the fact that it's encrypted. It's highly accessible by those bad guys with their ransomware. So where's the ransomware being stored? Is it being stored on the endpoints, or is it being stored on the server side with all the other high value assets? If it's on the endpoint, then that's simple. If we do backups continuously multiple times within the day, then we don't really have to worry too much about losing data or having data confiscated by adversaries or bad guys. So with that being said, I have not had to go through a ransomware remediation for any organization, but I get the purpose of not paying up. You should have a backup strategy if you're an organization.
Hell no, we ain't paying none. The best way, again, exactly what you just said, have a backup strategy. Ransomware at this point should be a known issue, and the best way to protect against that is using backup services that actually have some type of rewind capability. Like, for instance, Dropbox, I believe, used to have what they call PackRat or revision control. If you have like Confluence and you use that for your documentation, you can go back and revert to old versions of your article or your document. Also, what I'm seeing a lot of is that insurance companies are now asking about your backup strategy, and they want proof of said backup strategy. So I just set up a Azure instance for a customer, and they have QuickBooks data on there. Well, it has, RDP. It's accessible via the internet through RDP. And on that, though, I have the VM itself backing up once a day. And then the data, the file-based data, all the stuff that I find important or that's needed or the customer finds important, that's backed up twice a day, every 12 hours. So it's like if they have to go back on their transaction log, they only have to go back 12 hours, depending on what backup they decide to restore. And hearing about my customer mentioned that her sister, she was working for a company, her IT staff had them up within 24 hours with their accounting data. But another company that they worked with in the area, I think they were down for maybe a week or so, because just to try and recover data and get all the information back. So it shows that it's like the tale of two cities, the tale of two different IT departments or staffs that are saying, hey, we're going to back up this data, and if anything, we can get it back up and running and get all this information again, or we're going to just pay it out. And Azure backup service, or the Microsoft, I think it's MAS, Microsoft Azure backup or something like that. It's really cheap. It's like $20 for, especially if you're on the Azure cloud, it's fast and it's super cheap. So it's like, these things are there, and there's all types of cloud storage options out there. So you really should not be in this position.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally agree. All right, this next one is from AL.com. I guess Alabama. Yeah, Alabama.com. Alabama school system forced to move start date again due to malware attack. Houston County schools have again pushed back the start date due to a cyber attack. Schools in the county were originally set to open on Thursday, August 1st. That date was initially moved to Monday, August 5th. And now system officials said students will return to class on Monday, August 12th. The change comes after an apparent malware attack that shut down the system's computer and telecommunications network. Superintendent David Sewell confirmed the attack to the Dothan Eagle, but has not commented if the intrusion was ransomware, in which hackers demand money in return for freeing the data. Teachers and staff reported back to school on Monday as originally scheduled. Officials have not confirmed the extent of the information that was exposed. System officials are working federal agencies, or working with federal agencies, including the FBI, to investigate the incident. Again, who's managing all of this? I know Gabe said earlier that if the bad guys want you bad enough, they'll get their way in. But in this regard, a ransomware attack on this level means that there was something wrong with the infrastructure or the technology stack to begin with. If you do an investigation, and a lot of these companies don't want you doing an investigation because it will expose where they screwed up at, you'll start to notice how many vulnerabilities were never patched, how many OSs were never patched, not up to date, how many antiviruses had not been run, or how many signature updates it has. Okay, it received the signature update, but nothing was ever scanned because the attack vector was not detected. Just a variety of areas that really falls on the lap of the IT organization for that institution. It's easy to sit there and blame the hackers or the ransomware bandits, but you're not taking into consideration where they went wrong. They being the organization. Where did they go wrong?
Mike, you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry about that. I had to let a customer in here at my night job.
Yep.
Are you at a point for comments?
Oh no. Yeah, you can comment if you want.
Well, real quick, this is the biggest thing. You see a lot of people that are running these IT shops or these IT departments, and it's like, how could you let this go? And it also shows a real lack of knowledge, or a slacking off, if you will, of people in those departments. And sometimes you'll see that, it'll be older people that don't feel that it's necessary to upgrade their own knowledge, or not update their own knowledge of certain things. I'm not too into reading. I'm not going to lie to you. I read short articles, or I'll skim through some articles, but I've made an actual effort to say, okay, listen, I can't be out of touch with this. So I'll read more articles, and I'm reading a lot about MongoDB and some of the things that I'm interested in. And that helps me quite a bit to kind of stay on top of this, so I can know what to do, or at least have a bit of an idea of what to do when it needs to be done. And that's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Next article is from TechCrunch.com. Capital One breach also hit other major companies, says researchers. The data breach at Capital One may be the tip of the iceberg and may affect other major companies, according to security research. Israeli security firm CyberInt said Vodafone, Ford, Michigan State University, and the Ohio Department of Transportation may have also fallen victim to the same data breach that saw more than 106 million credit applications and files copied from a cloud server run by Capital One by an alleged hacker, Paige Thompson, a Seattle resident, who was taken into FBI custody earlier this week. It follows earlier reports from Forbes and security reporter Brian Curbs indicating that Capital One may not have been the only company affected, pointing to one of the world's biggest telecom providers, an Ohio government body, and a major U.S. university, according to Slack messages sent by the alleged hacker. The same messages were published by CyberInt report. In a CyberInt report published Wednesday, other victims may be inferred from file names, said the report, including Aparian, Infoblox, and Okupa. The Justice Department said Thompson may face additional charges, suggested other companies may have been involved. We reached out to several of those named by CyberInt with mixed results. Ohio's Department of Transportation said it was working with the FBI to try to determine what, if anything, was accessed, said spokesperson Erica Hawkins. At this point, however, we can confirm that the information in the reference file contained only publicly available data, and no private information was stored here. That would make sense because they're a public services company for the state. Ford spokesperson Monique Brentley told TechCrunch that it's investigating the situation to determine if Ford information is involved. Meanwhile, Vodafone spokesperson Adam Liversedge said the telecom giant was not aware of its data stolen in the Capital One breach. And a spokesperson for Michigan State University said it receives hundreds of threats and attacks on our system, and said it was hard to know if one recently was the alleged hacker from the Capital One situation. Our teams are looking into, but at this point, we have no information to share. Amazon told TechCrunch, at this point, we do not have proof that the perpetrator in the Capital One incident found similar application flaws in a few other customers. We've reached out to customers mentioned in online forums by the perpetrator to help them assess their own logs for any evidence of an issue. The hack of Capital One is the most significant data breach this year. Data was taken from an Amazon Web Services storage bucket, which included more than 140,000 Social Security numbers and over a million Canadian social insurance numbers, as well as other personal information. A spokesperson for Amazon said AWS was not itself compromised. Capital One said it learned of the breach through a third party who reportedly saw the alleged hackers' claims and boasts about their thefts. Security researcher John Wethington told TechCrunch that based on public information, including the Slack channel of which the alleged hacker was a member, likely other companies had data stolen. Based on the information gathered from publicly available information on the alleged hackers' GitHub or GitLab accounts, as well as public information from Slack channel, it's clear that the organizations, including Ford, Vodafone, and others, are possible victims of what happened to be a massive sensitive data hacking spree. So, it sucks to be a Capital One card holder at this point. What's in your wallet?
A security breach.
This is something.
You know, like I see these, and it reminds me of a personal experience with this. I was logging into Pinterest, and Pinterest is like, "Oh, okay, hey, listen, your password was found somewhere else." I could see this as other people will look at this and find ways to actually secure your data a little bit more. And it would be like, say, a white hat hacker would see all this information, and then you're starting to see where, what is it? These personal security, personal identification security companies, what they're doing is they're actually scraping sites or looking at sites like Pastebin or any of those repositories where code and just text information can be stored, and they're scraping that information and seeing if your information is on there as well as other people's information. Now, this is two things for them, or two benefits for them. One, they protect you and they actively show that they're protecting you. And two, they show that, hey, if you're not using our service, you should, because the only reason we know about you as a person and a potential customer is because we got your information off of, this exploited website or this, this repository of your information.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective to take as well. Very interesting perspective.
Yeah, like LifeLock, loves this stuff. They would look at it and be like, oh, okay, hey, potential customers, and making sure that our current customers know that we got their back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, let me get to this last one before we close out for tonight. This one is from Silicon Republic. Massive 40 gigabyte Honda data breach described as hacker's dream. On the eve of releasing its financial earnings for the past quarter, Honda created a situation described by one security researcher as a hacker's dream. According to Verdict, 40 gigabytes of critical company data amounting to 134 million rows of system data was stored on an unsecured Elasticsearch database. Keep that in mind, people who listen to this. This meant that anyone who knew where to look could have come across the company's most sensitive data, not only including information about the company's security systems and networks, but also technical data on all of its IP addresses, operating systems, and what patches they had. In effect, it gave hackers or even the lowest skill the map and details needed to potentially engage in a massive cyber attack against the company, including personal attacks against its employees. Speaking with Verdict, Igor Bakalov, chief scientist at the cybersecurity firm Synchronics, described the situation Honda created for itself as a hacker's dream, a treasure trove of the most sought after information, adding that whoever has it can own Honda's network. It isn't known whether the information exposed in the breach has been accessed any individuals or groups, but the nature of the breach leaves it possible for a devastating attack to come further down the line. Honda hasn't said what error led to the breach, but security awareness advocate Javad Malik of Known Before had one suggestion. It's likely that there was an oversight on behalf of an administrator which exposed the database publicly. This is why it's important to gain assurance that all systems are protected as required, and that staff have been given the right level of security training to know what to look out for and what baseline standards. Robust policy and user training may have helped to reduce the likelihood of this data exposure. Technology would have potentially alerted Honda to the issue and allowed them to remediate. And this is what I was saying earlier. What are these companies doing? If you do your research on some of these breaches, you'll see that there's a lot of incompetence happening within these organizations and leaving an unsecured Elasticsearch database unprotected and vulnerable was the source of your problems. So whether or not the bad guys are knocking at the door outside or they're scanning your network is irrelevant if you have a secure network, which goes back to what I said earlier about the 40% or whatever the percentage was that the UK thought that then their network, there was no way to stop a cyber attack against their network. The lack of confidence that you have is what's exposes something bigger, that you did not do the due diligence for your organization. Now, Gabe said earlier, and shout out to Gabe, that there are companies out there that did everything that they were supposed to do and still got breached. That may be true, not denying that. But in this situation, you had 40 gigabytes of data on an unsecured Elasticsearch database. Make that make sense to me, Young Grizzly.
I could make it make sense pretty easily. This sounds like an abandoned deployment of software. So I know with Elasticsearch, I've used it myself here in a data center. And what we use it for is just log collection for all the systems. Mm-hmm. And with Elasticsearch, it comes a part of what they call the ELK stack, which is Elasticsearch, which allows you to search and index all that information. Logstash, which collects that information from your different endpoints, and then Kibana, which allows you to visualize that information. So this looks like maybe they tested the software and they used it at one point and they just stopped using it. Elasticsearch creates a ton of data because it just gets a lot of information from all these different systems. And what they said is correct. They can pretty much own the network because they can see when certain scripts get shot off, what the name of those scripts are. So they can actually, and then looking at those different systems and their patch levels, so they can find that one open door, that opening, if you will, to get into it. And this just sounds like somebody wasn't maintaining this software, and they were like, well, again, I'm just saying this, it might not be true. But they looked at it and said, oh, well, yeah, this server's not in use. Just go ahead and use it, or something else, And they just were very lax with it. And some people really like to reuse certain servers. And it's like, it's so cheap nowadays, just spin up a new one. Or even just get a new piece of hardware, or get hardware where you can virtualize all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent stuff. It's a shame that a company as big as Honda, with all the money that they generate from selling these cars, could not hire enough IT staff to actually look over this. Someone had to do an audit. Someone had to do a vulnerability assessment. Someone had to be looking at all of the inventory and saying, okay, what's up with this one database that's sitting right here? What are we doing with this? Where was the compliance check on that? Where were the alerts going off that you have 40 gigabytes of data exfilling your network?
Yeah, and that's a lot of data, and it's almost like not that much data too, because Honda as a company, I would think they would generate a lot more data in terms of what they can actually do in Kibana, Logstash, Elasticsearch.
I think the data collected was coming from the assembly line, right? So their factory machines and stuff like that, IoT and robots and those parts machines and stuff like that. I think that's where it came from, if I remember correctly. But still, why aren't you collecting that into? If you had a database, who was in charge of it? Who was the custodian of the database and the data itself? I'd be breathing out in their neck. I'm pretty sure they're writing their resume right now and probably uploading it to LinkedIn and probably minusing out or canceling out the fact that they work for Honda in the wake of the breach.
Yeah, taking that experience out.
Yeah, or take a leave of absence.
Yeah, I mean,
sabbatical.
I have to mention this. This is just something kind of anecdotal to this, but a friend of mine is working on a lot of different modeling of financial data, and he was able to get all the financial data, or his historical financial data, stock charts, so on and so forth, from a very popular hedge fund. And he was able to take all that information and then, normalize it so he can actually put his own business logic to it, if you will. And it's just like, and then I asked him, I was like, "Oh, can I get that?" And he's like, "Yeah, just bring over a hard drive." And then that's just how easy it is. And he's not using it for really malicious purposes. But at the same time, I'm sure this company did not want all that data to be freely distributed amongst, friends in this case, or other people, And then another thing that I wanted to mention earlier is this is one of the problems, or one of the other side of, or the other edge of the double-edged sword that is open source software, that everyone can see the code. Therefore, they can see all the vulnerabilities that are within that code and then exploit them, such as, the stuff that you see with SSH and OpenSSL back in the, I think, 5-10 years ago, or like 5 years ago. I think Heartbleed, and then, or Shell Shocker, like all these things are open source, and people can view all this information and then make their own little hacks, and then also make their fixes. So it's good and bad.
Right. And that's where your security vulnerability specialist comes in and looks at the code or looks at the application and says, "I think we need to patch this. And let's schedule a time. Let's get this taken care of now." And a lot of organizations either have the people and they're incompetent, or they don't have the people and they're just SOL. But either way you put it, either way you put it, they, the due diligence is on their side. It's not on anybody else's side.
Right.
All right. That is the last article for the night, man. Young Grizzly, what did you take from this, and what's your closing thoughts?
I have a couple of things for closing thoughts, but closing thoughts on this matter, at least, is just that I think a lot of guys should not be picking what should I start with, what should I stay away from. It should be more or less identifying needs and then filling those needs, and then also keeping yourself open and agile and versatile and adapt to any situation and environment, and keeping your mind open would probably be the best way to sum up all of that. But just be open, and be able to adapt to any environment to say, I can do that, yes. Or I can't do that right now, but I know somebody that can, or give me some time so I can learn that skill. Because you're going to have to become that Swiss Army knife that knows systems, networking, and even stuff down to ZFS. Especially as a consultant, that's what's made me my money, is being able to say, yes, I know what that is, and going from there, and then also protecting, and that goes into protecting people and knowing what's out there. So definitely be read up and listen to the Black Brain Trust, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm learning, even just a G command. That's pretty major.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. If you have not already hit the like button, please hit the like button. Share the video if possible once the stream completes, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust and from their community page when we post on there. We are on a new platform, which is Zoom. So things are a little bit different, but we will all get acclimated with this at some point. So with that being said, I am out. Young Grizzly is out, and we are gone.
Mike?
Yes, sir.
One thing.